Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some unnerving Reddit horror stories. You guys have been loving the Reddit horror stories and I have loved recording them. I love these long story videos. They're so entertaining, scary, weird, and like the title says, unnerving. So these stories will be great and you'll want to stick around. And I just want to say thank you so much for stopping by. It means the world. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Spotify, and like and subscribe here, like I said. And yeah, this video will be long enough already. So without further ado, let's get into some unnerving Reddit horror stories. The Lady Upstairs, written by LooseAd723. After 36 years of living in an apartment complex, I can confidently attest that a night owl is the worst kind of neighbor. Being as lucky as I am, I had one of those moving into the apartment right above mine at the start of October. It was a lady who seemed to have an endless supply of worldly goods that all needed to be put into place the moment she moved in. Every single evening at 9 p.m. exactly, she would either start hammering away, drilling the walls, or pushing furniture across her floors, always managing to reach the noise level of an angry bull in heat. I've always had quite sensitive ears, so I'm no stranger to being awoken at night because of bothersome noises. There is always noise in the city, whether from drunkards singing at the top of their lungs or nocturnal critters running amok in the streets. Trust me, the sheer number of times I've been woken up by an opossum knocking over a trash can outside my house is ridiculous. The thing is, these disturbances would always be occasional and brief whenever they occurred. I could easily fall back asleep afterwards, but ever since the day that lady moved in, the night has been filled with constant sounds of her mayhem. The cacophony upstairs would go on every evening for about 3 to 4 days in a row. Then at some point, I would hear a large thudding sound, indicating that she had brought out yet another box full of stuff that needed to be set up. This routine sent me into a hellish cycle of exhaustion. I'd fall asleep late and wake up exhausted in the morning. I would then have to drown myself in coffee and go to work, hoping that I could get some sleep later in the evening. Don't tell me that I just should have confronted her. I didn't want her to think I was just some cranky old man. Besides, I don't really like confronting people. I've always felt awful whenever I've had to reprimand someone. I also didn't know her name, which I felt like would have made the interaction even more unbearable. I just sat on my couch, waiting for the commotion to stop. Suddenly, 3 weeks had passed and she showed no signs of being finished unpacking. The seeds of chaos were planted as the clock struck 9 p.m. on an unusually hot evening in late October. An evening so hot that I had to have my windows open to be comfortable. The lady upstairs started toiling away, following her usual schedule. It was just as loud as all the other days. I twisted and turned in my bed, trying to cover my ears with my pillow, as I had done so many nights before. But this night was different. The heat mixed with my drowsiness and the sounds from upstairs all compiled into a thundering migraine. It felt as if my brain was swelling, trying to crack my head open and run away to escape the noise. I couldn't take it any longer. I sat up in my bed, inhaled all the air that I could fit in my lungs, and yelled, "Quiet." My yelling was followed by a large thud from upstairs. She had just started unpacking another box. I thought to myself, I couldn't believe it. She had to have heard me. My yelling was so loud that they probably heard me all the way up on the 5th floor. I stared at my ceiling, awaiting the sounds of the troublemaker and her orchestra from hell. I waited, and then I waited some more. More time passed, but there were no more sounds coming from upstairs. Maybe she did hear me. Maybe she was finally being respectful. I felt my headache subside as I lay back down. I closed my eyes, letting my fatigue carry me towards slumber. I was completely unbothered for the first time in a long time. I rose with the sun several hours later, and I didn't have to chug half a liter of coffee to stay awake. I went to work with a smile on my face and a good feeling in my body. Everything was easier. I was happier. It was paradise compared to before. I came home that evening, hoping that the night before wasn't an exception. If only I had been that lucky. After the sun had gone down, there was activity in the upstairs apartment again. This time, though, the sounds were a bit different. All I could hear was bump, 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 repeated over and over again. I couldn't place the sound. It didn't come from any tool that I know of. I was sure of that. There were irregular pauses between the sounds, ranging from about 5 seconds to 10 seconds. It wasn't just heavy footsteps, that was for sure. The spaces between them were too big. It wasn't a hammer either. The sounds were much too quiet for that. This thought process continued as I lay in my bed that night, my wary eyes fixated on the ceiling. Maybe she's tapping her foot on the floor to a song, but the sounds are not rhythmical in the slightest. Maybe she's dropping a ball repeatedly, but why would she even do that? Is she a juggler? No, that'd be ridiculous. These were but some of the thoughts rushing through my head as these sounds kept resonating in the background. It was beyond the midnight hours before I fell asleep that night. When I woke up in the morning, the noises had stopped. I assumed that she had just started working on her apartment again. Throughout the whole day, at my work and when I went home, I silently prayed that I wouldn't hear those sounds from her apartment again, even though they were less noisy than normal. There was something about not being able to identify them that just made them much more annoying. To my dismay, however, the noises had begun anew by the rising of the moon. Bump, bump, bump. Lying in my bed that night, I was gritting my teeth out of sheer annoyance. I covered my head with my pillow again, but it was no use. I could still hear the sounds no matter how much I tried to keep them out. They made me feel as if someone was constantly poking at my brain, molding it like a piece of clay. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe, just maybe, she was mad about my yelling and was doing this to get back at me. Maybe she just wanted to drive me nuts with her antics. I tried to fall asleep, but it wasn't happening. The sounds from upstairs echoed in my head, much louder than any of the sounds that had been there in the weeks before. It was pure agony. My heart skipped a beat as my phone started ringing. I cautiously picked it up, wondering who was calling in the middle of the night. Hello? I mumbled. Peterson, where the fuck are you, man? We've been waiting for you for 45 minutes. Oh, hello, sir. I'm sorry, but my shift doesn't start till... I looked towards my window. The rays of sunlight had already broken through and cast light onto my floor. Shit. Sorry, sir. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I said as I got out of bed and hung up the phone. What followed was one of the worst days I've ever had in my life. I was a walking corpse with only one thing on my mind. What were those sounds? I eventually got home and I didn't care about relaxing. Relaxation wasn't even on my mind. All I wanted to do, and all I did, was await the sounds. I sat on my couch, staring at the ceiling, and like clockwork, the commotion started back up late into the evening. Bump, bump, bump. I couldn't take it another night. It was torture. I didn't care what she thought of me anymore. I didn't care about having to scold her. I stormed out of the door and up the stairs and pounded on the door. What is your fucking problem? The sound stopped, but I wasn't satisfied. They were going to start again. I wasn't fooled. I turned the door handle and walked inside. Her apartment was cold like night and as silent as a library. I walked into the living room, and that's where I found her. She was lying on her back at the foot of a small stepladder. She lay beside the corner of a wooden table. The corner was covered in a mixture of dried brown blood and long black hairs. On the side of her head was a crater of blood, hair, skull fragments, and brain matter. Both of her arms were mangled to the bone. A swarm of flies was nesting on her body. The windows in the living room stood open, taking in the autumn breeze and wafting away any smell of rot there should have been. As I stood there, taking it all in, I heard some skittering. I stared in disbelief as a chubby little form crept out from one of the moving crates on the floor. where it had likely been hiding from all the noise I'd made. It was a possum, currently unaware of my presence. It crawled over the body and started gnawing at the hand. Every time the possum ripped off a piece of flesh, the hand was lifted into the air before subsequently dropping to the floor, producing a light bump. I haven't slept since 2023. Written by Sad or Dead. He writes great stories on Reddit, so go check out his page. And now into the story. Growing up, I had two choices in life. I could follow in my father's footsteps as a farm equipment maintenance worker. It was a decent job with decent pay, but I always got this sense of dread whenever I walked by his workshop. It was this big, windowless building in a pale green color, and I always had this feeling that if I stayed there for too long, that place would eat me alive. So I went with the other choice in life, my mother. She was always larger than life, and she wanted me to be too. She was all about the hustle. When she and my father went separate ways, she took me and my sister across the country to Bangkok. She was the embodiment of Ot Prio Wa Kin Wan, roughly translated to endure the sourness and enjoy the sweetness later. She would take any job at any time and claw her way upward. So my sister and I turned out the same. We would work, study, and socialize. We were supposed to be everything at once: smart, strong, cultural, and opinionated. I studied computer science at night and worked delivery during the day. I got a pretty good eye for traffic, so I could make it around the city without fearing for my life. That's easier said than done. Traffic laws around here seem to be more of a suggestion rather than a law. I also did the odd job making websites for friends, family, and acquaintances. That would eat up most of my weekend nights. And finally, the one job that never paid me anything: looking out for my sister. My sister Isra worked as a club and event promoter in the inner city. She mostly worked weekends and nights, and I'm the only one she trusts to watch her back. If someone bothered her, I'd be on call. If she needed a sudden ride home, I'd be on call. I'd get yelled at for being late, or for not responding fast enough, or for 1,000 different reasons. It was by far the worst job I'd ever had. But family is family. I'd be working so much that the only time my friends would see me was when I came around to pick up Asura. They started to call me Lon or Lurk, something you would say when it's time to close for the night. I was the closing time guy. When I showed up, it was time to go home. Not the most fun nickname to be stuck with in your early 20s. When my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2020, I'd just turned 21. I was put in a position where I had to support both myself and my sister economically. Sure, she pulled part of her weight too, but she was looking ahead. She wanted to work in cosmetology, especially in movies and TV shows. That would take money and time. So for a while there, I had a lot of sudden weight put on my shoulders. Studies, work, more work, and being there for Isra. I barely slept, and when I did, I'd wake up at the slightest sound. I was so used to sleeping lightly, waiting for my sister to call for a pickup, but I didn't have a lot of choices. I had to keep going, for everyone's sake. So I made a plan. I just had to make it until I was done with my studies. I looked for temporary solutions. I'd take caffeine pills, but they ended up giving me a stomach ache. I tried this dextrose drink from a local pharmacy, but that thing almost gave me arrhythmia. I didn't want to try any heavier stuff, so I kind of gave up hope. Then I met a guy named Samyat. Samyat is a nice guy in the wrong kind of business. About 10 years older than me, but 30 years older at heart. To this day, I'm not sure what he really does, apart from co-managing a couple of downtown clubs. I think he buys things from places you shouldn't. Some kind of gray area importer. He was a part owner of a club where Isra worked on the weekend. The first time I met him, he was sitting outside the club with a cold beer, having a cigarette. He didn't look like the owner, so I sat down next to him to tie my shoe. He looked me up and down. "You just gonna sit down like that?" he asked. "You got an appointment?" "I need an appointment for a chair?" From my chair, yeah. You the boss? I'm a boss, yeah. I was too tired to care, and frankly, getting my sister fired from that place would have made my life easier, so I looked right back at him. You don't look like a boss to me. I didn't know if he was gonna hit me or hire me, but he ended up belly laughing and offering me a cigarette, so I guess I made the right choice. I would spend about 1 or 2 nights a week at Samyat's club. He'd offer me a job, but the pay was awful, and I was busy with other things. I literally didn't have enough hours of the day to work for him. I think that was for the best, though. He was a great guy to hang out with, but he must have been an awful boss. Cheap bastard. Samyat had some sympathy for me, though. I was working hard to make ends meet, and he respected the hustle. He offered me a couple of side gigs. For example, picking up leftover credit cards at ATMs. There's a kind of ATM that takes a long time for the card to come back out, so a lot of tourists think it ate them, so they leave the card behind. Samyat paid a little for each card I could bring him, so I would walk around and pick them up while waiting for Isra to finish work. Every little bit helps. We developed a good friendship. I would show up an hour or so before Isra needed to pick up just to hang out with Samyat. We'd usually talk just about movies, cars, girls, whatever came to mind. I didn't have a lot of people in my life I could just talk to about nothing. And I didn't think he did either. We'd usually end up having a beer and chew beetle nuts. They're these nuts that wrap in a leaf and chew. It gives you a pick-me-up that makes your mouth burn. It sums up Samyat pretty well. Legal, but spicy. But things took a turn when I was invited to a private party of his. See, I'd been up for 27 hours straight at that point. I've been working on a large project for my computer science class, and I've been hoping to get a couple of extra hours in at the delivery company. That, and a client needed me to redo their homepage after it got hacked. It was a perfect storm of a lot of little things all at once, and it drove me to exhaustion. But I still got to Samyat's party. He had a nice place outside of town. He'd invited some people from the club and some business associates. He had these parties about once every 6 months or so. It was a way to show appreciation and brag a little. Still, Samyat had pulled out all the stops. He'd felt sorry for me, seen me work so hard, and he'd brought a guy there from a research institute. They needed people for a data entry job, and he thought it'd be my kind of thing. Problem is, I was so tired I looked like I was on drugs. I didn't even understand the guy was offering me a paid position. As the party died down, Samyat took me aside and sat me down for a chat. We chewed some beetle nuts and he took off his sunglasses. The man didn't look me in the eyes a lot, so I knew something was up. "I worry about you," he said. "You're working too hard." I'm sorry," I said. "It's not that I don't appreciate this, but I just had so much to do." "Then tell me," he continued. "Tell me how I can help." "You don't need to do anything," I said. "I'm just glad to have a friend, you know?" I could see the wheels turn in his head. His eyes welled up a little. He gave me a hug and took me out of the veranda overlooking the city. He patted me on the back. "You deserve better," he said. "I'll get you something better." The following weekend, I got a text from Samyat. He was excited to show me something. He usually had something to share, but this time seemed different. I was a bit anxious about seeing him, but it was a nice change of pace. So that Saturday, I was invited into the club. I went straight past the bouncer, through the dance floor, and into the back rooms. From there, I followed a corridor to a small office at the back of the building. After all I'd seen from Samyat, I expected something grander, but it was just a little office with an old laptop, a USB fan, a couple chairs, and a shitty TV in the corner, all accentuated by a couple of early 2000s posters of women in bikinis posing with cars. Samyat was smiling ear to ear and waved me over. He opened a safe under his desk and pulled out a small box of white pill bottles. They were all sealed and unmarked, except for a small blue sunflower print on the cap. He sat me down and took a bottle out of his pocket to show me. "This is gonna help," he said. "Trust me." I don't do drugs, boss." "I know you don't. This isn't that." He showed me his phone and a conversation he'd had with the guy from the party, the one from the research institute. Apparently, He'd managed to get his hands on a couple of cases of an off-market stimulant. I tried it myself, he said. Going on 2 weeks now. It's a little miracle. What does it do? What's the catch? No need to sleep anymore, he smiled. 1 pill, you're good to go for at least 18 hours. No way. You might need another hour or so to recover when you finally go to bed, but apart from that, it's perfect. Doesn't make your piss smell, doesn't fuck up your hair, nothing. No way, I repeated. Too good to be true. Samyat sat down at his desk across from me, giving me a long look. You won't let me get you a better job, he said. Let me get you this, as a friend. I could tell he was being genuine. You could say a lot about Samyat, but he'd always been honest with me. I swallowed my fears and picked up one of the pills. I don't know, I said. There's got to be a catch. Never more than 1 a day, he said, or you'll get sick. And no more than 2 days at a time, maybe 3, but then you'll probably get a headache. Oh, and no drugs. What do you mean? There's a list of things drugs it reacts with, but you don't do that stuff, so you're good. What about caffeine? As long as you don't pour stuff like... Samyat picked up a small piece of paper and looked it over, reading from the list, and then a bunch of different hard drugs, crystal, booger sugar, etc. There goes my Friday night. Funny, Samyat scoffed. If you don't want it, it's fine, but no, I'll try one. And so I did. Taking that first pill was like breathing in after a deep dive. I felt lighter, but not high. I was just well rested, ready to take on the day. But there was also a slight chill to it, like a cold breath sweeping across my nerves. I looked at Samyat like I was seeing him for the first time. He got up and slapped his hands together with a grin. I knew it, he said. I knew this would be it. How much, I asked. For a bottle, how much? Take it, he smiled, pushing over the whole case. Guy owed me a favor. Really? You're giving it away? I'm just glad to have a friend. That night was the first time I stuck around to party with Samyat. For real. The man was a force of nature. He downed shots like they were water. He knew all the best food vendors on the block by name, and he'd ping-pong from after party to after party without breaking a sweat. I was just along for the ride. We ended up drunk on a beach, watching the sunrise. Not a blink of tiredness in our eyes. Our day was just getting started. No need for beetle nuts to keep us going. I wouldn't need those ever again. Next, you're gonna get a woman, he murmured. Then a job, a great job. You can fix anything, huh? That's why I'm the boss. No, I don't want to owe you anything, I said. You get that, right? You don't owe me anything. Kind of feels like I do. He asked me to show him the phone. I did. And he scrolled down to his number on the contact list. He tapped it, hovering his finger over the delete button. You can delete me today and never call me again. And that's up to you. Really? Really. He handed me the phone back and turned his attention to the sun. But for as long as you feel like it, I'm here, he continued. No strings. No strings? He shrugged and slid his final beer my way. It's just nice to be the good guy for once. The next day, lying in my bed, I was scared. I had no idea how my body would respond. It was a make or break moment where I'd find out if Samyat had screwed me over or if he'd really helped me out. I had a whole case of those pills stashed away in the closet. More than enough to keep me going for months. But I took his advice. Every 2 or 3 days or so, I'd give it a rest. So when I went to sleep that night, I didn't know what to expect. I had strange dreams. I dreamt I woke up in this barren world with a dead tree towering in the distance. There were no stars in the sky. It was desolate, but peaceful in a way. And I dreamt that there was someone there, in the dark. Someone looking for me. But I woke up long before they found me. I was a bit worked up, but it was just a dream. Those fleeting images rolled out of my mind faster than it took me to make breakfast. From that moment on, I decided to give these things a go. I would rest every 3 days or so, but until then, I was constantly on the go. I could work as many hours as I wanted. I could be up all night finishing projects left and right. I never missed a call from Asira. I could keep up with demands, and I could do it comfortable, without side effects. Sure, whenever I crashed, I'd dream about that place again. The dead tree, reaching for the moon, the desolate ruins, and somewhere out in the eternal night, something was looking for me, but it never had the time to find me. I'd always wake up long before it did. It was comfortable, efficient, and I could do it all. I had time to work a little with Samyat. Not anything big, but just little odd jobs here and there. He was fair, but didn't pay much. But then again, I was making more money than I knew how to spend. I got a second chance at an interview with Samyat's guy at the Research Institute, and that time around, I nailed it. It was just a low-level data entry job, but I could do it remotely, and it paid almost twice as much as my delivery job. I had to brush up on my English, but that wasn't a big deal. Isra and I had to learn it early on in our lives. My mother made sure of it. Isra had saved up enough money for her cosmetology classes, so I got some more time to focus on other things. I invested some time in a startup app with some guys from my classes, and we made some solid progress. Overall, things looked pretty good. Weeks turned into months, and months eventually turned into an entire year. I still had plenty of pills left, and I got into a healthy routine. I slept better, I ate better, and I had so much more time on my hands. It got to the point where I couldn't imagine going back to life without those pills. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what that place in between the wakeful world and my dreams was. That place in the starless night with the dead tree in the distance. Who were the dark shapes roaming the fields of black sand, and who was out there looking at me? I wouldn't think about it too much. I chalked it up as a weird side effect, but not much else. It didn't affect my everyday life, so why should I care? Fast forward to 2023. I was co-owner of a small company. No more data entry. We had an office and 5 employees. My nickname still stuck around, but it was more or less sarcastic. I was no longer the guy who showed up at the end of it all. I was the first in line. I would plan my come downs in a way that people never noticed. I had this reputation of working around the clock, and people just couldn't figure it out. I didn't share my secret with anyone. I figured there'd be some serious consequences if those pills got in the wrong hands. My sister worked a nice job at one of the local malls. One of the really big ones. Not just any old mall, it was very well paid. And she could support herself more than enough. She ended up moving in with a guy, and I got a place of my own. I could finally take a step up and get myself something nice. I still spend time with Samyat. He was the only other person in the world that knew of the pills. He'd stopped taking them though. He found them too distracting when it came to keeping a schedule. He was going steady with a lady named Wan Wan, and he hated seeing her go to bed on her own. It was surprisingly sweet. And more pills for me, so win-win. In February of 2023, my sister got married. It was bad timing since I had a huge project to work on at the time. So even with all my available time, it was still not enough. So I had to do something Samyat advised against. I had to keep going for 5 days straight. Just 2 days more than the ordinary 3, but still. Now, I didn't immediately notice anything. It worked just fine. But when I finally crashed, after almost a full week without sleep, I had the most awful nightmares of my life. Not only was I back there, in that desolate space, I could feel it. The black sand creeping into my shoes. The howling of people in pain. I thought I heard gunfire too. What little vegetation lived there was twisted into a midnight blue, just like the blue sunflower on the cap of the bottle. But this time, there wasn't just something in the dark, looking for me. No, it was hunting. I have this vivid memory of crawling through the sands of an old ruin, hearing something closing in. Despite the sand, it was wet, vicious, It made this disgusting sound, like a crowd of large men struggling for breath all at once. I would hear it touch its way across the ruins, looking for me, and everywhere it touched, something sizzled, like burning acid. It tried to speak. I know it did, but it couldn't. It had too many tongues, and they all tried to speak at once. Eventually, it found me. I couldn't look. I couldn't breathe. I could feel the size of it without even looking as it loomed over me. I tried making myself small, but it didn't matter. It sighed, like it had enjoyed a cold glass of water on a warm summer's day. It was so pleased to find me. And as it moved closer, I heard something dripping, sizzling into the sand. There was a powerful smell of ammonia and something akin to mothballs. It touched my arm, and it burned into my skin. It burned so bad that I woke up. And when I did, I had a burn. A coin-sized black mark with gangrenous flesh tightening the skin of the arm, stinging with every flex of my tricep. That place was real. That thing had to be real. For a full week after that, I kept feeling like I'd been seconds from death. I had a doctor check out my arm, but he couldn't make sense of it. It was an acid burn, but it behaved like a frostbite. In the end, he had to make a small procedure to remove the dead skin, but it was overall fine. I just had to keep it clean and bandaged and be prepared for a nasty scar. But that thing had been so vivid. Days later, I could still smell it. I remember this one time when I was taking a shower, when I had to turn off the water. I thought I heard something sizzling in the other room. Wrapped in a towel, I peeked through the door, hoping against hope that I was just being paranoid. This time, I was, but what about next time? I swore off the pills. I was in a good place, and I didn't need them anymore. I'd gained everything I wanted. Sure, it'd take some time to get back to a normal schedule, but I couldn't go back there. No wonder we weren't supposed to take more than 2 or 3 pills in a sequence. If I'd been there a second longer, it would have taken my whole arm. Another hour, and I'd be dead. I decided to give it all back to Samyat. By that time, he had expanded his business a bit, but he'd calmed down as a person. He was a changed man. He was engaged to Wanwan, and he was trying to turn his life around. In fact, we hadn't seen each other for some time. He was a bit surprised when I called about meeting him in his office. I met Samyat in his downtown office late one Friday night. It was a strange feeling. There were people everywhere, but I still felt like I was alone. There was this thought crawling around in the back of my head, whispering to me that if I slowed down and really listened, I could hear that sizzling acid as it burned into the asphalt. So I kept my head down and tried to get into the music, the bass, the beat of the party, but it was all just superficial. I couldn't help but think back on that thing. Every time I heard a cough, a sneeze, someone clearing their throat, I thought that was it. It found me. I could feel the squelch of it in my ear, almost like a heat. But I made my way through the club and joined Samyat in his office. I put the pills on his desk and sat down across from him. "I'm done with them," I said. "They do something to you?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. I'm just done." "All right, no worries," Samyat nodded. "You okay?" "Not really." Despite not hanging out for a while, Samyat was his usual self. He put the pills away, sat down next to me, and handed me a beer. He'd installed the mini fridge next to his desk. The damn thing made more noise than a ceiling fan. "I'm not going to ask about it," he said. "You look like shit. I feel like shit. What happened to your arm?" "Frostbite." Samyat snorted but saw that I wasn't laughing. He opened his mouth but closed it again. Whatever had happened to me, he knew better than to laugh. Instead, he leaned over, looking worried. "Fuck the pills," he said. "You're sticking with me now, all right?" "All right." He made his best effort to keep me company that night. We had drinks, met some people, and sang some karaoke. I almost got into an arm wrestling competition with a drunk Dutch guy. It was nice, and for a moment, I didn't hear those awful noises. I didn't smell those awful smells. Later that night, I could feel myself growing tired. Usually, I would just pop one of the pills. But I settled for a classic instead. Beetle nuts. Samya and I wrapped them up and bit down. It was nice to feel that familiar crunch and burn. It was a return to form in a way. It was the way things were supposed to be. By the end of the night, we ended up on that same bench, watching the sun. But this time, he was exhausted. He was nodding off over and over as he waited for a friend to pick him up. I was, strangely, not tired in the slightest. Maybe you still got some of it in your system, Samyat mumbled. Makes sense, right? I mean, bigger doses, take longer. Probably, I nodded. Or maybe it was the nuts. Nah, they don't work like that. They're a kick, not a trip. By the time Samyat's friend came around to pick him up, he could barely keep his eyes open. He lumbered into the passenger seat and looked back at me one final time. I'm getting rid of them, he said. Don't worry, it's done. You'll be fine. But I wasn't feeling fine. Or rather, I was, but that was the problem. I went home and I still couldn't sleep. I went an entire day and I still couldn't sleep. I hadn't taken any pills for some time, but I was still up and about. I was getting worried, but I didn't know where to turn. Had I taken a pill by accident? I reached out to Samyat's contact at the Research Institute, but we couldn't talk about it over email since it was monitored, and this was hardly legal, so we decided to meet downtown later in the week. For the next few days, I was a wreck. I kept thinking about that place and that thing. I'd been up for so many days that I didn't want to think about what would happen when I returned. It would be waiting for me. I could feel it, hear it. I met the man from the Research Institutes in early morning. I paid for his coffee, but I didn't get any myself. He was an American in his 50s with a shaved head and a well-trimmed goatee. He hid behind a black baseball cap and wasn't much for small talk. I decided to get right to it. I explained the problem. After taking a larger than usual dose, I couldn't sleep anymore. He didn't look that surprised. That only happens when you take stimulants, he said. Didn't he warn you? I haven't taken anything, I said. I don't do drugs. You sure? He asked. Nothing. Does alcohol count? I asked. Beetle nuts, caffeine? What? No, that... He stopped for a second. His eyes turned away as he thought about it. He brought out his phone and checked something, then nodded. Beetle nuts, he nodded. That's high in arcoline. High in what? Arcoline. That's the first thing on the list. That's the worst one. Wait, what? He adjusted his glasses and read the list out loud. He was right. Arcoline was the first thing on the list, right there next to hard narcotics. What does it mean, I asked. What's going to happen? He leaned forward, looking over the edge of his silver-rimmed glasses. Arcoline amplifies the effect by a magnitude of about 100. It's one of the reasons they had to shut down the development. At that magnitude, there's no telling what's going to happen. Wait, 100? So you're going to be awake for maybe a year, maybe 4, and then something I can't even imagine is going to happen to you. There was nothing else to say. He had no advice to give. There were no solutions. The damage was done. I almost burst into tears right then and there. My hands were shaking. I would be awake for years and then something he couldn't even imagine. If the effect of 2 pills, too many, caught me a burn on the arm, what the hell was going to happen after 100, 200? The bandage itched and I could hear the sizzling from a nearby kitchen. But it wasn't from the kitchen. It was that thing. And it was waiting for me. It was just a matter of time. I tried everything, but there was nothing to be done. There was nothing wrong with me on paper. I was healthier than ever, in fact. The lab in Vietnam that the man spoke of had been shut down, and all traces of it was dismantled. I had a vague lead to an investor in the US, but it didn't lead me anywhere. I had to sell my share in my company. It stung, but the payout was more than generous. It would keep me afloat for a couple of months, maybe a year, while I tried to work something out. But it was a desperate search for nothing. Even the man from the Research Institute would drop off the grid. And when strange men in suits started asking my friends and family about me, I knew I'd taken a step too far. This was in February 2023. Every day from that point forward has been a nightmare. In May that same year, I lost the need to eat. It's like my body entered a kind of metastasis. I could sit in a room for days on end, staring at a wall, and nothing would change. I would feel nothing. I would experience nothing, and I wouldn't care. And with no food, I need no bathroom breaks. Sometime in July, I lost the need to breathe. I'd forget to do it for days on end, and my lungs would deflate to the point where it hurt to use them. After a couple of weeks, I couldn't talk without bleeding anymore. In late October that year, I stopped blinking. I'd forget to do it for long periods of time, and dust would settle in my eyes. It didn't hurt, but it was uncomfortable to wash them, so I just ended up keeping them closed. Something happened to my skin. I think it stopped needing sunlight. Over a couple of days, I grew so pale you could almost see through me. My fingernails would fall off without using my mouth and jaw. My teeth fell out of my skull. I barely noticed. I had to move in with my sister to care for me. She couldn't understand what was happening, and neither could anyone else. She would force me to go to the doctors, and they couldn't make sense of it. Whenever they mentioned specialists, some anonymous group would throw enough money at them to look the other way. But all that was just cake topping. It was all just physical things. It didn't compare to my thoughts and feelings. I'd feel closer and closer to that dark space. That space beyond, where that thing waited for me. It hungered for me. All the needs and wants I'd lost, it gained. It was hungry, tired, sunburnt, and in constant pain, and it wanted to give it all back to me, to consume me with it. If I just listened hard enough, I could hear it panting, like an eager dog waiting for master to put food in his bowl, ready to tear into me, unashamed. Sometimes I forget what world I'm in. I'll get up and wander around, feeling the walls, imagining them as crumbling ruins. My sister once caught me wandering into the street. If my lungs had worked, she would have heard me begging that thing to leave me. Instead, I got hit by a car, and I didn't feel a thing. Laying crumpled into a pile by the side of the road. The things people say feel like a distant dream. I have no need for serotonin, so joy is something of the past. Sometimes I can hear the music and cheering across the city, but it feels like they're mocking me. But the fear, that's still there. It may be the only emotion that remains. Now it's 2025. I think I attended Samyat's wedding, but I can't know for sure. I think I was there. I didn't see or hear. I can't feel anything when I move my arms anymore. There was a nice smell. I think he offered me some cake. I tried to smile at him, but I don't know if I did it. I've written this with great effort over several weeks. My sister has helped. She washes my eyes, and I would look at the letters for her to type. If I stretch a little, I can get enough air in my lungs to make a noise or a short word. Sometimes at night, when my sister is not here, I think I can hear something outside. Not just in my mind, but on the street. I think they're watching me. I think they're curious about what happens when I go to sleep. Or maybe they're scared. It's funny in a way. They called me Lurk. Closing time. It's fitting. I can't help but think I should have stayed with my father, maintaining farm equipment. I wish I could dream of seeing those pale green walls again. I had to finish this in a hurry. I think the effect is wearing off, like the man said it would. Yesterday, I yawned. Today, I'm tired. Good night, Bangkok. The Worth of a Life by Rain. What would it take for you to kill a man? Excuse me? I asked, taken off guard. A stranger in an expensive-looking suit sat across from me at the bus stop. What would it take for you to kill a man? He repeated. Why are you asking me this? I asked, increasingly unsettled. He leaned back against the bench casually, as if he were simply asking for the time. "Because I want to know, David," he said, his face expressionless. "How do you know my name?" I asked, a chill running through me. This was getting creepy. "Who are you?" The stranger leaned forward and looked me in the eye. His stare was cold and unwavering. "I know everything about you, David," he said, not offering his own name. "I know that you are drowning in student loans. They had to sell your car, that you live from one meager paycheck to the next." He leaned back and looked away. "I want to know what it would take for you to kill a man," he finished. This guy was seriously freaking me out, and I wanted to run or call the police, but I was afraid of what he might do. He was obviously some kind of psychopath. I decided to humor him carefully until the bus came, just in case. "Why would I ever kill someone?" I asked. "Aside from self-defense, I don't see how that could ever be worth it." "You have a gun, and someone is kneeling in front of you," he said. "What if pulling that trigger would save 1,000,000 lives? Would you do it?" A psychopathic philosopher? "So, the trolley problem?" I asked cautiously. "Switching the tracks to save 1,000,000 people by sacrificing one?" The stranger waved a dismissive hand. "You could think of it that way," he said. "But it doesn't necessarily have to be 1,000,000 people. It could be for anything. Power, money, even the cure for cancer." I never liked the trolley problem. It was always an impossible choice for me. "I wouldn't be able to decide," I said, shrugging. "Luckily, I'll never have to." He leaned forward again. "But what if you do?" he said. "What if I make the power to make it happen?" This guy is insane, I thought. "You have the power?" I asked, exasperated. "If so, why not do it yourself? Why would you make a random person kill someone to cure cancer?" "I can't do it myself," he replied. "I'm unable to directly interfere. I can only act when someone, of their own free will, and by their own hand, provides me with a soul to do so." I leaned back and crossed my arms. "Prove it," I said. "Prove that you have the power to do this." "Like I said, I'm unable to act," he said. "However, I can tell you that when you were 10 years old, you found a frog in a secluded field. You named him Jim. You would return weekly to see him until one day he was no longer there. You had a crush on Jenny in high school," he continued. "You still think about her. You want to call her, but keep putting it off. You're planning to visit your brother's grave tomorrow," he said. 2 days ago, a conversation with a coworker reminded you of him. You were going to buy flowers later today from the florist on 7th Avenue. "Is this satisfactory?" the stranger asked. I sat there, frozen in shock. I had never told anyone about any of that. Ever. No one knew but me. It was impossible. Undeniable proof was staring me in the face. There was no other way that he could have known. It took me a moment to find my voice. Okay, I said shakily. So you need me to kill someone? Kill one person to save others?" "What you kill for is up to you," he said. "You can receive anything you wish." The stranger stood up. "You have 20 minutes to decide," he said, looking down at me. "You will never have this opportunity again. Think carefully." He turned and pointed. "In that alley, where I am pointing," he said, "you will find a man." I turned to look at the alley. It was right next to the bus stop. He continued, "You will also find a gun. State your desire loudly and clearly before pulling the trigger." He lowered his hand and turned to leave. "Decide what you kill for. Decide the worth of a life." The stranger started walking away. "Remember, 20 minutes, he said, his voice fading. "Will you pull the trigger?" I looked at my watch. then slumped back on the bench, overwhelmed. What should I do, I thought. Was there actually a man in that alley? A man who would live or die depending on my decision? Was it worth of a life? Was it more lives? I could save the unsavable, cure the uncurable, find the cure for cancer, fix climate change, discover the secret to immortality. A world without suffering. Just one life lost to save countless others. But what about money? I could be rich. Never work another day in my life. Debt erased, no longer struggling, barely making enough to survive. A life of unparalleled luxury. For one pull of the trigger. Power. I could rule nations, change the course of history. Every law, every war, every scientific pursuit guided by my hand. No one could stop me. Unmatched potential achieved by removing another's. My thoughts were racing. What about the person I would kill? Did they have family? Friends? Were they like me? With their own hopes and dreams? Their entire life gone with one bullet. It would be my fault. It would be my decision that they should die. Their innocent blood would be on my hands. Forever. 15 minutes had passed. Do the ends justify the means? Should I kill them? Or do the means justify the ends? Should I let them live? I kept looking at the alley. I had never been so stressed in my entire life. I could barely think. I had to decide. I had to decide now. I jumped up and started walking toward the alley. There was no choice. I had to do this. The world would be a better place in exchange for one single life. My steps carried me closer. It had to be done. I would make sure they were remembered forever as a hero. Someone who saved the world. Just do it. Keep walking. My heart was aching, tearing itself apart. Get there. Pull the trigger. My legs were so heavy. And a life. I struggled to keep moving. I was almost there. I have to. 10 feet from the alley, my legs gave out. I fell to my knees. Tears rolled down my face. I couldn't breathe. I looked down at my hands. They were blurry, shaking uncontrollably. It was too much. I can't do it, I whispered, sobbing. I can't do it. I couldn't kill someone innocent, for a world they would never see. My decision was made. I would not pull the trigger. Trying to control my trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and called the police. It was clear to me now. It couldn't be measured. The worth of a life. Soon after, the police arrived. They couldn't find the stranger I'd been talking to. They did, however, find someone in the alley. Someone holding a gun, waiting for me. There's something in the forest pretending to be a person by decisive unluckiness. The bus ride out was long and quiet. I spent most of it either staring out the window or drifting in and out of sleep. I was the last one aboard after a few passengers trickled off in small rural towns. The bus suddenly came to a halt, and a distraught man got aboard. He stumbled down the aisle, sat across from me, and began to scribble intently into a battered, leather-bound book. He looked older, maybe in his 60s, tired-looking, wearing well-worn and dirty hiking gear. He spent the whole ride either writing or flipping through the pages. About an hour before my stop, the bus driver called out, "Rainham National Park Ranger Station." The man abruptly stood up and rushed to the front of the bus. He searched his pockets frantically, then slapped some loose change onto the fare counter before darting off without saying a word. Sometime later, the bus driver called out my stop. As I was about to exit, I noticed that the man from earlier had, in his hurry, left his book on the seat behind the driver. I figured I'd keep it safe. If I saw him again on the trail, I could return it, or I could hand it over to the rangers on my way back home. The trail was empty except for the occasional deer or rabbit darting between the trees. I spent hours listening to the crunch under my boots, bird calls, and the rustle of leaves and pine needles. As the sun crept closer to the horizon, I figured it was time to set up my camp for the night. I found a suitable spot next to a small stream and began unpacking my backpack. I set up my tent, gathered some firewood, and boiled water from the stream to rehydrate a freeze-dried meal. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the temperature began to sink. I tucked myself into my sleeping bag, but I couldn't shake the urge I had been trying to ignore all evening. I glanced over at the book sitting half buried in the open lid of my pack. I reached for it and flipped to the first few pages. The handwriting was compact but neat. It started off like any trail journal. Short entries about trail conditions, notes on the weather, and a few sketches of flowers. One entry even described a fox encounter in surprisingly poetic detail. I had just turned to another page when I heard a voice call out, "Hello? Anyone there?" I slowly unzipped the tent and poked my head out. In the dim glow of the dying embers, I could just make out the outline of a man standing a few meters away. "Sorry to bother you. I noticed your fire," the man said. "Would you mind if I pitch my tent here? It's getting late and I'd rather not stumble around looking for another spot in the dark." Out here, hospitality felt less like a choice and more like an unspoken rule. "Sure, plenty of space," I answered hesitantly. He crouched and began to stir the fire with a practiced hand. With a few quick motions, he coaxed the embers back into a flame. The fire blared brighter than it had all evening, crackling and alive again, pushing back the shadows and fully illuminating his face. He looked to be in his 50s, nearly bald with small patches of hair clinging to his scalp, dark rings around his eyes, and an unshaven jaw. His clothes were covered in dried mud. He smiled faintly. "Hope you don't mind," he said, glancing up at me. He lowered himself onto a rock across from me and warmed his hands over the fire. "My name's Eric," he said. After a moment, "You been out here long?" I'm John. First day out here. You?" "Long enough," he replied with a chuckle. "Well, I don't want to keep you up all night." I crawled back into my sleeping bag as he pitched his tent next to mine. The last thing I saw before I drifted off to sleep was his silhouette, sitting perfectly still by the fire. "Morning," I mumbled, stepping out of my tent. A small kettle of water hissed quietly on a makeshift grate over the flames. "I didn't hear you get up." He glanced at me with a practiced smile. "Got up early and figured I'd boil some water for your coffee." I froze. "How do you know I drink coffee in the morning?" "I recognized the acidic scent on your breath yesterday. Figured you'd want the water ready." His tone remaining nonchalant. Some habits are hard to miss. I rummaged through my pack and pulled out the small tin of instant coffee. "Well, I've got some bread too if you want some." Eric shook his head. "Thanks, but I've already eaten." He poured the hot water into 2 cups and I stirred some powdered coffee into mine. I reached to pour some into Eric's cup, but he quickly lifted his cup of plain, hot water to his mouth and drank it in one swift motion. Perhaps he prefers tea, though, I thought. Breakfast done, we put out the fire and efficiently packed up the tents and gear. The morning light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I unfurled my map and compass and started to plot a course to the next campsite, when I felt Eric put his hand on my shoulder. "I know the way," he said simply. There was no arrogance in his tone, only a certainty that left no room for discussion. The air was crisp and birds called sporadically from the treetops. Eric moved with an ease that made it clear he was more than comfortable here, navigating rocks and inclines without hesitation. We hiked for hours in silence. Curiously, Eric fell back to walk behind me, occasionally offering directions or commenting on my footing. At first, I thought he might just have been giving me some space, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he either wanted to watch me or didn't want me to watch him. The forest seemed to respond to our passage. The rustle of leaves was quieter and the birds that had greeted the morning had gone silent. Eventually, The urge to pee forced me to set my backpack down, and I walked behind a nearby tree. When I returned, I noticed the main component zipper on my backpack was pulled down just a crack. "Need anything for my pack?" I asked Eric. I looked at your compass to make sure we're heading the right way." Not wanting to antagonize my new hiking companion out in the middle of nowhere, I gave him a nod, and we pressed on. The path gradually widened into a clearing, and the new campsite lay ahead. I unpacked my tent while Eric built the fire with practice motions. "Here, let me help you with that," Eric said quietly and came over to me. He grabbed the tent stakes and drove them into the dirt with his bare, flat palm. Seeing my surprise, he patted my back, his hand feeling cold, even through the fabric of my shirt. He returned to the fire, sitting perfectly still and watching me with unnervingly attentive eyes. As we waited for the water to boil for supper, I retrieved the leather-bound book from my backpack. As I flipped it open, I noticed Eric's eyes slightly widen, a flicker of recognition that vanished as quickly as it appeared. He shifted back into his usual posture, hands resting on his knees, and fixed his gaze on the flames. Settling back against a log, I flipped to where I left off that evening before and continued to read. October 4th, 2025. We made good time to the first campsite, arriving well before sunset. A great start to our 5-day loop. Clear sky, light wind from the west. A gunshot woke me up after midnight. Eric's bag was empty. I called for him and received no response. He came out of the dark a few minutes later, said he'd had to scare off a bear lurking around the camp. We'll take a look around the area first thing in the morning. October 5th, 2025. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary around the camp. Found prints, not from a bear though. Eric's been mostly quiet. Says he slept badly. Air heavy with thunderclouds on the horizon, but the storm never came in. Trail mostly dry. October 6th, 2025. I haven't seen Eric eat or drink since yesterday morning. He waved off breakfast. At the stream, he didn't refill his bottle. At lunch, he said he wasn't hungry. Maybe he's queasy. I tried to bring up some old stories. He seemed oddly curious, like it was the first time he had heard them. Didn't add details or correct me the way he always does. Just watched the firewood collapse to coals. Otherwise, it was very humid, and a full moon helped to light up the forest at night. October 7th, 2025. I woke up twice last night. Eric was still up. I don't think he noticed me. I decided to confront him this morning about his strange behavior. He just sat there, expressionless. I've noticed that his reactions always come a second too late, like he's trying to figure out how he should respond correctly. His skin looks different too. New wrinkles, a slight yellow tone, and his hair has started to fall out. My only explanation is that something might have poisoned him. October 8th, 2025. It doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't blink. There is no soul behind its eyes. It just sits by the fire and watches. I cut a hole in the back of my tent. Tonight, I'm leaving. I looked up from the journal and met Eric's eyes across the fire. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, without breaking eye contact, he said calmly, "The water is ready." My hand shook as I fumbled with a pack of dried chicken and poured in the hot water. The plastic crinkled loudly in the silence. Eric shifted slightly, the firelight flickering across his face. He opened a small pack of chicken, picked out the pieces of meat with his bare, dirty fingers, rinsed off the sauce in the boiling water, and swallowed the pieces whole. After some time, he spoke. "These woods are old. They have stories if you know how to listen." "What kind of stories?" I asked, careful to not let my unease show. "Well, there's one about a creature that's been here longer than any map or trail. Most people think it's just a local legend, but I've seen signs that suggest otherwise." He leaned forward, and for a moment his face held what might have been a look of sorrow. "They say a long time ago, There was a man who lived not far from here, a hunter, clever and strong, but with a hunger in him that no food could satisfy. He began to hunt not for deer, not rabbit, but people. Travelers, wanderers, anyone foolish enough to stray too far into the woods. He ate their flesh, wore their skin, and thought himself above the laws of men. For his crimes, God, or maybe something older, cursed him to walk the forest forever, never resting, never belonging. To torment him further, they say he was given a gift. He could take the shape of any man or woman and wear any face he desired. I could study them, live beside them, almost fool himself into believing he was human again. Almost. Eric stirred the fire with a stick. No matter how much he learned how to laugh, how to cry, or how to tell stories, something always betrayed him. His reflection came back wrong. His eyes were void of a soul. And when people noticed, when they looked too closely, well, he had to feed. He paused, letting the silence fill the clearing. They say he still walks these woods, listening, learning, hoping that someone will mistake him for a human. Yes, spooky story, I muttered, no longer able to meet his eyes. My mind raced. Should I make a move, bolt into the forest and risk being caught in the dark, or stay and act like nothing had changed? Every instinct screamed to run, yet my body was frozen in place like a statue. I studied the features of my companion, and with every glance, my stomach twisted tighter. His skin was pale and patchy, loose in some places, and stretched too tightly over bone in others. Yellowed with hints of purple bruising around his neck. It looked as though it had begun the early stages of decomposition. Even his breathing seemed off, shallow and deliberate, as though he were carefully measuring the amount of air in each inhale. And yet, I had been blind to the truth, staring me in the face. I curled my hands in a fist to keep the shaking from showing, forced myself to breathe evenly and to keep my expression neutral. My mind raced to find the right words, a way to break the tension. I rubbed at my eyes, feigning a tired yawn, and muttered something about turning in early, hoping that my voice didn't reveal the dread that had solidified inside me. Just as my mind had started to pick apart the inconsistencies of his disguise, I couldn't help but wonder if he could do the same to me. I slipped into my tent and pulled the zipper closed with slow, careful hands. My fingers shook as I unfolded the map, the paper crackling far too loudly. I traced the lines with a finger, estimating the nearest road at just over 40 kilometers away. The problem was, I couldn't even be sure of our location. Having followed Eric's lead the entire day, it was also a day's trek in daylight, let alone in the middle of the night, but it was the only chance I had. Essentially, only flashlight, compass, map, knife, water bottle, protein bars, matches, and the journal. I stuffed them all into a small drawstring sack that usually held my sleeping bag. Impelled by the journal entries, I carefully drew the knife from its sheath. I gripped the knife with both hands to steady it and pressed the steel into the tense nylon until it parted with a faint hiss. I eased myself through the slit, every rustle of the fabric thunderous to my ears, and slipped into the darkness just beyond the firelight. The forest stretched on without end. The only sounds were my rasped breath and the thud of my heartbeat. Beneath it, faint at first, there was something else, a low murmur at the edge of hearing, like someone whispering in the distance. As I ran closer, the sound grew into the unmistakable rush of water. The river was wider than I'd hoped. The moonlight glinted across the surface, silver streaks breaking into shards where the current churned. I hesitated at the riverbank, weighing whether to wade through the freezing water or search for a way around, when a sudden crash echoed from the direction I had come, twigs snapping, branches splintering. Something was moving fast and coming straight towards me. I ripped the sack from my shoulders and hurled it across the water. It landed with a thud on the gravel on the far shore. I stepped into the water. The cold was immediate and brutal, stabbing like needles up my legs. The current nearly swept me off my feet. It wrenched a boot loose from my left foot and dragged it downstream. I waded toward a massive tangle of driftwood caught against some rocks. My body pressed against the slick wood as I slowly submerged myself until only my eyes broke the surface. I forced myself to stay still, every muscle locked. It crawled from the trees on all fours, its limbs bending in impossible directions, moving with an unnatural elasticity. Its spine arched grotesquely, inverted like a demonic contortionist. Eric's head was twisted around on its own neck with eyes staring forward. It waded into the water, coming straight toward my hiding spot, each step deliberate, like a predator closing in on its prey. It stopped and jerked upright, like a dog catching a scent. It sniffed the air and slowly tilted its head downstream. In a sudden blur of motion, it bolted in that direction, thrashing through the water with a speed that defied anything human. I dragged myself from the freezing water and stumbled onto the shore. I collapsed for a moment on the gravel, heaving for air. I slowly managed to stand up, hoisted the stack over my shoulder, and staggered into the trees. My left foot, now only protected by a wet wool sock, hurt with every misstep. Jolts of pain shot up my leg as I stepped on a sharp rock or a pointy twig. I leaned against a tree and slid down until my back rested firmly against the bark. I needed warmth and dry clothing, but a campfire would likely act as a beacon to my location. Hands shivering, I fumbled for my bag and pulled out the leather-bound book. I held it flat to illuminate the pages with the help of the moonlight as I flipped to the next entry. October 9th, 2025. Humans evolved to be expert pattern recognizers. Our brains expend valuable energy analyzing faces in real time, mouth curvature, the cadence of a blink, the subtle shift of a pupil. Most people don't notice. It's unconscious. But when a detail doesn't fit the expected pattern, something ancient and deep inside us rebels. It's an instinct honed over thousands of years, designed to protect us from the unnatural. If someone is reading this, don't make the same mistake I did. It has spent centuries perfecting its disguise, because it craves the only thing it can never truly be: a human. Don't break the illusion. Not for a second. Not even in your thoughts. I pushed myself off the tree, every joint stiff, and started walking. I forced my steps to be silent and careful. I waded back across the river. My destination was just a short distance away. On the riverbank, I found a trail of broken branches and followed them until I saw a faint glow flickering between the trees ahead. The campsite looked unchanged. The familiar silhouettes of the tents stood exactly where we had pitched them, but there was no sign of Eric. I stripped off my soaked clothes, hung them over a branch, and dug out a dry set from my bag. I sat down next to the campfire and stretched out my hands to feel the warmth. A shift in the air prickled the back of my neck, and I heard the clicking sounds of joints snapping back into place, one by one. I have something I've wanted to tell you. I found this book on the bus. My thumb traced the worn spine as I spoke. I think you know who it belongs to. Perhaps you could return it to its owner for me? Eric stepped out of the darkness. His neck was bruised, and the stretched remnants of his face, pulled too many ways, sagged down. Partially covering his eyes and mouth, he looked at me from across the flames, then sat down on the other side. He took the book from me and placed it on the ground next to him dismissively. He then stretched out his other hand, holding something. Found your shoe. I stared down at the dirty sock protecting my foot for a moment, then forced myself to look up to meet his eyes. Thanks, I managed. Must have slipped off your foot, Eric said casually. I was unlucky. Unlucky, Eric repeated, tasting the word in his mouth. No, you are lucky. Lucky I found it. How would we finish our hike if you couldn't walk properly? Every movement now felt like a performance under scrutiny. Every blink and every word I spoke had to seem natural, too fast, too slow, too rehearsed, and the fragile illusion I had mended for him would shatter. You should get some sleep. The last leg will be the most difficult, Eric stated matter-of-factly. Grateful for the sudden exit, I gave him a small nod and slipped into my tent. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake for hours, listening intently and waiting for something to happen. Morning soon arrived, and I emerged from the tent to find Eric exactly where I had left him, though something was different. The item that had kept me alive was gone. As we packed up the tent for the last time, I spotted the now blackened and gray remnants of leather and paper in the fire pit. The trail was uneven and littered with slippery rocks, wet from overnight dew. Concentrating on each careful step gave me a brief mental reprieve from the predator I could feel stalking just a few paces behind me. As I stepped out of the tree line and onto the road, the footsteps behind me abruptly disappeared. I turned and looked back into the dark woods I had spent the weekend trapped in. The only traces of him were quadrupedal prints pressed into the dirt beside my own boot prints. My mind replayed every moment of the last few days like a nightmare I couldn't shake as I waited for my ride home. The bus rumbled as it pulled away from the stop. I leaned back in my seat, the window cool against my temple, and let out a slow breath. After a while, I slipped a hand into my jacket pocket and felt something dry and brittle. Charred scraps of paper rested in my hand. The edges were blackened and fragile, but the writing was still legible. I took out my phone and opened a blank note. I'm doing my best to recount everything that has happened while the memories are still vivid and fresh in my mind. And alright guys, that wraps up some unnerving Reddit horror stories. Would you like to see more videos like this in the future? If so, please comment down below your thoughts, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram, and follow me on Spotify. It means the world. I appreciate your guys' support. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. It helps so much. And comment down below, would you like to see longer videos, shorter videos, or this same length? I read every single comment, so please comment down below. Check out some other videos on the channel. I appreciate you guys watching. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some insane true Reddit threads, and oh boy, today's Reddit threads are deranged, unhinged, and like the title says, insane. So you're gonna want to make sure to stick around. And I appreciate you stopping by. It means the world. To make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. The channel subscriber goal is 1 million subscribers before the end of the year, so please subscribe. And these Reddit threads just have me on the edge of my seat the entire time, so I'm excited to get into it. And yeah, without further ado, make sure you grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's get into some insane true Reddit threads. My husband, 32 male, is convinced I, 26 female, am pregnant. I'm not, but he won't believe me. What do I do? And just a quick warning, this Reddit thread is just very depressing and disturbing, and let's get into it. I'm truly at a loss here. This situation has gotten worrying, and I don't know what to do with it. Since about a week ago, my husband became convinced I'm pregnant. I have no idea why, because I'm not. We haven't even started trying, though we do have plans in the future. We were just making conversation, and yeah, I did mention feeling tired, but that's all. A few hours later, he just came in so excited. I told him I'm not, but he won't let it go. He has made remarks about how happy he is, what a wonderful mother I'll be, what our baby will be like. Not all the time, but it has come up multiple times a day. I told him I'm not. I even took a test because even I started wondering. and it was undoubtedly negative. I showed him and he just got annoyed, said tests can be wrong. He didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. The next morning, he acted as if nothing happened. When I tell him I'm not, he just kind of shuts me out. I lost my stuff yesterday when we were in bed, and he put his hand on my stomach. Told him he's acting crazy. I'm not pregnant and his behavior is scaring me. He went to sleep in the guest room after that and left for work early in the morning. I haven't seen him or spoken to him today. I'm just at a loss. I don't know where this obsession is coming from. I even asked him if I gained weight, if that's what has gotten him confused. He assured me I didn't. I'm thinking of contacting his parents or maybe a therapist or something. I honestly don't understand what's happening, and I'm worried about my husband. And then the OP makes a quick update to the post and says, "Thank you all for the replies. I didn't expect all of this. It's been overwhelming and I'm incredibly grateful." He's asleep next to me right now and I keep going through all the comments. My husband is one of the kindest people I have ever met. I promise you all that he's not trying to manipulate me or would do anything to hurt me, but that does make me believe something is really wrong. I'll contact my and his parents in the morning once he's left for work. Maybe go stay with my mom for a bit, though I hate the idea of leaving him like this. I also definitely will make an appointment with my doctor for a blood test. Thank you all for the advice. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One person says, honestly, this is the kind of delusion that could easily lead to him becoming violent. I don't know if he will, and I'm so sorry this is happening to you, but I think that your number one priority needs to be getting out. This isn't a talk to him situation. This isn't a work it out. This is quite literally a run for your life and get someone else to help him afterwards kind of situation. I do not think it is an overreaction to move out with zero prior warning and not tell him where you're going. Then after you're out, call his parents and tell them what's going on. I know you're probably thinking your husband wouldn't do anything like that. He's not violent. He wouldn't hurt you. There are two possibilities here. He is either experiencing psychosis/delusions or he isn't. If he is experiencing psychosis, then this is not your husband. This is some rogue part of his mind that is taking over. His perception of reality is quite literally wrong, and there is no amount of love or care for you that's enough to overcome the fact that what he sees in the world is not what is real. The second possibility is that he's not experiencing any form of psychosis or delusions. This is honestly the scarier possibility in my eyes, because that means he's intentionally trying to manipulate you, probably in order to control you and prevent you from leaving, and he may possibly forcibly impregnate you. And then the OP replies and says, "Oof, this reply hit me hard. I appreciate it a lot. I'm very torn. I love my husband very much and I'm worried about him right now, but I am feeling increasingly uncomfortable at my home as well." And then another commenter says, "To me, this sounds really pretty ominous. I'll tell you why, but I'm going to explain my own background before. I have multiple degrees with a medical and psychology background, and I've written a bit about wartime psychology, prisoners of war, and brainwashing. So yes, this may sound extreme, but there's something about this that genuinely horrifies me. So a conditioning tactic to re-educate prisoners of war is that you insist on an event. Naturally, they're going to be like, what? That didn't happen. So you take something away, insist again, take it away, insist again, take it away, etc. Eventually, the prisoner of war is going to be missing so much stuff, they will eventually be like, oh well, fine. And then you give them something. Then you insist something else, etc. Basically what occurs is this scenario of repeatedly removing and giving quality of life things like comfort, food, stability, is that in the long term, it, number one, trains the person to view the person with the accusations as a key to survival. And number two, it trains the victim to believe anything the individual accuses them of. The reason this only works in wartime circumstances for prisoners is because the prisoner has no choice but to endure it. They can't just leave. So the reason this disturbs me is because his behavior knowingly or unknowingly follows this behavior. He says you're pregnant, insists it, and then diminished happiness. He comes back saying you're pregnant again. You show the test. Now he only withdraws happiness but alienates you by moving to another room and taking away feelings of belonging in your own house. Now he takes his presence away, leaving you alone in your house as a stranger. Yet you know, if you were to say, okay, I am pregnant, suddenly all of that would return. So he insists you're pregnant, takes something away and gives you time to think. Then tries again, you say no, more taking away and more time. Okay, are you going to play along now? The only difference is you are able to leave at any time. But it is actually concerning that if this is a deliberate tactic, it's because he's decided that you can actually not go anywhere. There's actually something really wrong here in my opinion. Not trying to scare you, but either this is on purpose or he has lost a grip on reality and neither are safe for you to be around right now. Edit, I'm no longer discussing my credentials. You can say I work for McDonald's, believe me, I don't actually care. Sorry OP for the long chatter on your thread. If you'd like to discuss in DM, argue or whatever, please send me one. No problem. And then another user says, the first time I got pregnant by my husband, he knew before I did. He had a feeling. Home test said negative, but a blood test showed positive. And the OP responded and said, oh my, that's wild. Either way, I'll meet with my doctor, if only to have some conclusive proof that I am not. And then the OP makes a mini update the next day, and it reads, things escalated yesterday, but I'm with my mom and his parents are at our place. And then one user responds and says, so you are safe? That is a relief. I hope your husband gets the help he needs because it is pretty obvious he needs to talk to a professional. And the OP says, yes. Thank you for asking when responding to, are you safe then? So, a very concerning update. But then we get a more in-length update 2 days later. And it reads as follows. Hi everyone. I hope it's okay I post this update. I really appreciate everyone asking if I'm safe, and I am. I wish I could give clear answers, but I can't. Things escalated when I tried to speak to him. Keeping some of y'all's advice in mind, I sat him down and explained to him that I'd love to have kids with him in the future, but that I'm not pregnant right now, and that his insistence worries and scares me. I told him we could go to the doctors together, if that would put his mind at ease, or I could take another test in front of him. I was just hoping to snap him out of it somehow. He got very agitated, said many hurtful things, and accused me of being a liar many times, that I'm trying to keep our baby away from him, and so on. Nothing made sense, and I wasn't feeling safe anymore. I knew my husband would never harm me in any way, but that wasn't my husband. Things got worse. He did hurt me, but nothing permanent or even emergency care worthy. I also know that if he was in his right mind, he would have never done anything like this. I called mine and his parents, and I'm now staying with my mom. He did seem to calm down a bit when his parents arrived.
I haven't seen or spoken to him since then. His mother, she's an angel, is keeping me posted about everything. We all agree something is very off about him, and we don't know what it is. But he hasn't agreed to getting himself checked out in any way. I don't know how they'll go about it, but they say, and I painfully have to agree, that it's best to keep my distance for a bit, as most of it is aimed at me. I'm safe, so is he. I miss him so much, and I just want an answer as to why he's being like this. I keep trying to figure out if there were signs before, or what I did wrong. Thank you all for the replies. They were a great help. It's so kind you cared to ask if I'm safe. And now let's get into some of the top comments on this update. One user says, "Let's pray it's not drugs, since he refuses to get checked out. I'm so sorry, OP. I hope everything gets better soon. I don't know if going back to him is a good idea though. He physically hurt you." And the OP responds and says, "I do think that whatever is causing this is the reason he hurt. We've been together for some years now, and he's never even raised his voice at me until this." And another user says, "Thank you for letting us know you're safe. I really hope he agrees to get the help he needs, but it is absolutely in your best interest to protect yourself right now. Good luck." And another user says, "Sounds like he has an undiagnosed mental illness or major trust issues. He should seek out a psychiatrist or therapist or both. As others have mentioned, probably best to see a doctor and rule out other causes also." And another user says, "Oh, woo, I am so glad you left. I'm a psych NP, and this situation terrified me on your behalf. He is not himself, and he is not safe for you right now. He needs to be seen by a medical professional ASAP, like last week. It must happen. If he continues to decompensate/get worse, you may have options for involuntary treatment, depending on where you live. It very well could be a physical medical issue causing the behavior, or it could be a mental health crisis. Either way, if he's physically sound and mentally erratic, start with psych emergency services. Are you in the USA? Does your area have a crisis services team? Ours is called Erie County Crisis Services, and they are available 24/7 for crisis calls, and they also will send out mental health professionals to assess someone in the field and see if it's an emergency/involuntary situation. The downside of an organization like this is they're often overtaxed, and when they aren't able to send an agent who is a mental health professional, they will send law enforcement for a wellness check so not to ignore the situation. You can call the nearest psychiatric emergency room and ask if they have any recommendations. This is another point. There are psychiatric emergency rooms. Most decently sized cities have one. You can call law enforcement, but please be mindful, this choice comes with risk. Especially if you or your husband are people of color, this could be putting his life at risk. If his behavior is dangerous, he could be involuntarily hospitalized or worse, arrested. The best case scenario is getting him to a medical professional now before he ends up in jail and his medical emergency is ignored. So many of my psychotic patients have been arrested, and the delays in care are terrifying. Good luck, OP. Protect yourself first and stay away, but good luck in his long-term recovery and your future reconciliation. And the OP gives us an update 2 days later that says he has apparently agreed to get himself checked out, but I haven't heard anything else. And the OP makes another mini comment 10 days later that says he's in the hospital. Many people were right about it being a medical issue. I'll get more into it at some point, maybe, but first need to see what's going to happen with him. I've seen him a couple of times. Sometimes he's his normal self. Sometimes he can't stand the sight of me. We're managing somehow. And then the OP posts an update the next day, and let's get into it. The update reads, I don't know if anyone will see this here, but you've all been so kind to keep asking whether or not we're okay. I hope I'll reach you like this. I'm going to keep it short. My husband has a brain tumor. A lot of people commented this, and I feel an immense amount of guilt that I hadn't considered it until then. All the headaches and other symptoms in hindsight we had previously dismissed because of a stressful work situation and so on. I'm beating myself up that I hadn't seen it before. A wonderful team of neurosurgeons, oncologists, and other physicians is figuring out the best approach here, if there is one. We'll hear more in the next days. I've spent more time with my husband. Some moments he's his amazing self, others he's filled with anger. It's difficult, but we're managing. I wouldn't have been able to without the support of our friends and family. I love my husband. This situation is terrifying. In moments of clarity, he's trying to make me laugh, so I don't worry. That's who he is. Thank you for everyone for pushing me to get him checked out. And let's get into the comments. One user says, in his moments of clarity, does he recognize how he's been acting? Or is there always some level of reality distortion? And the OP responds and says, he seems mostly very confused, if that makes any sense. He has apologized, but his mind is just not working with him right now. Another user says, OP, this is not the first time I've seen a thread on Reddit where a brain tumor caused significant behavior changes. I hope the surgeons are able to remove it and your husband's previous personality comes back. Have the doctors given you any info on what to expect after the tumor has been removed? And the OP responds and says, right now, it's the question if it can be removed. There's a lot we don't know right now. The doctors and nurses have been incredibly kind, though. And then we get an update 3 weeks later titled, I'm irrationally angry at my husband for having a brain tumor. The update reads, I can't say these feelings out loud, not to the people around me, so I hope it's okay to do it here. But I'm furious with my husband for getting sick. I know he's not to blame. I know he's suffering. Yet I'm still furious with him. I can't explain it. He is the love of my life. How dare he get sick? How dare he change anything about the wonderful life we have planned? How dare he leave me so much sooner than when we're old and senile? 2 months ago, our life was perfect. How could everything get so horrible so fast? I love him so much it hurts, and because of that, I'm so angry with him right now. I feel like a horrible person. And let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, oh yes, I feel this. Fellow brain tumor partner here. Hi, and I'm sorry you're in this club. The hardest part was that we had a bad year running up to this because his personality changed and we weren't getting along. I was in the process of getting us a couples counselor for fresh eyes on his erratic takes instead of spotting the signs of a tumor. So I'll always carry that guilt with me. But it's a real whiplash on the relationship dynamics. Wait, you didn't mean all that shit? You're just sick? And now our future is all messed up and I'm your carer? He's a lot more back to his rational self now that he's had the tumor resection. But radiation is a bastard too, and chemo, let's be honest. Not sure where you are in the journey with treatment. It sounds pretty fresh. We're about half a year in, so if it's helpful, I can share some insights on what it might be like for the road ahead. And then we get an update 9 days later. And let's get into the next update. It reads, "It's 2 a.m. here, so I apologize if this is not very coherent. I'm going to step away from all social media, and I wanted to leave you with a brutally honest update. It's silly, but y'all's support has meant a lot to me. Don't get me wrong. I have wonderful family and friends, but in a way I have to comfort them too. And I can't deal with it right now. My husband is dying. In the 5 weeks since his diagnosis, he's gotten worse quickly. Today, the decision has been made not to continue treatment, or even properly start it. He's not strong enough. He has a month, maybe, if we're lucky. I'm furious at the world right now, and I'm furious at him, which makes me an enormous bitch. Because what kind of person is angry at their husband for being ill? I love him so much and I hate him for it. I'm sorry this isn't a better update. I wish you all the best." And let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "Holy hell, I'm so sorry. I remember hoping it was schizophrenia and not a tumor. I'm still kind of hoping this is someone's creative writing venture, but I'm devastated for you. I know tears from a stranger on the internet aren't really a comfort, but they're still falling for you. I lost my little sister a few years ago. I love her so much. She was my world. I was like a half parent to her. I was planning my life on having her live with me. And after the very quick progression of an unknown illness, she was gone. I still can only imagine what you're going through. I'm so sorry. I hope you're already linked with palliative care. There's some amazing people. Take it literally 1 second at a time, then 1 minute, then an hour, then a day. I was taking it an hour at a time for months after she died, and I still sometimes go day by day. If you can get grief counseling, go ASAP. I did phone sessions, can give you more info if you're in Australia. I mainly use my sessions to just talk about my sister, to tell stories and remember her, to have someone new know her. Sending you love and light." And the OP responds and says, "This comment means a lot to me. Thank you. I'm sorry for what you've been through. Our medical team has been incredible, even dealing with my emotions with a lot of patience. I just wish this wasn't the path we had to take." And then we get a heartbreaking update post 4 weeks later, titled, "He passed." He passed on the 16th. We had his funeral shortly after. Thank you for the messages. Wishing you all the best. And then we get another update 4 months later, titled "Little Update." And this reads, "Hi friends. I wanted to write a little something here. I don't know if anyone will see it or care. I probably didn't show it properly, but your words did mean something to me. I'm doing okay-ish. Sometimes the grief makes me physically nauseous, but I manage. My friends have been wonderful. For a while, I took a step back from his and my family. I do regret that. I guess I had a hard time dealing with their sadness, but we're mostly doing better now. I have a dog now. My friend had to get rid of him because of her living situation changing and asked me. Saying yes, initially temporary, was the best thing that happened. It gave me a reason to get out of bed, to focus on something else. Now, don't go gifting your grieving friends random pets, but for me, it worked out very well. I've also started working out again since a few weeks, only part-time, but it's going all right. And I recommend therapy for anyone going through this. I resisted at first, then agreed and ended up with a therapist who I didn't connect with, I realized now, and stopped again. Eventually, I tried again, and I'm grateful for it. I feel a lot more comfortable and heard with her. It's hard. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted to no longer continue going on. Sometimes I still do, but I feel lighter than I did before. It's getting better. I still cry often, and that's okay, as my therapist would say. One step at a time. Thank you for giving me more kindness than I expected from strangers. And let's get into the top comment. The top comment reads, "Yes, we absolutely still care, and I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so glad that you cut yourself a break for how you're grieving. As many people told you, anger is a normal part of grief and doesn't make you a monster. It just makes you human. I honestly don't know if it's harder to know that someone is going to pass away or if a spontaneous loss is worse. I wish more people understood that you have every right to fire your therapist and that it's okay to audition potentials. We're here for you, whether you want to talk about rainbows and unicorns or what you had for dinner or your grief, etc. Our support is unconditional. Sending you so many hugs." And then we get one final update 8.5 months later, titled "Last Update." And it reads as follows. I've been coming back to this account often lately and decided that it's time to let it go. It's been over a year since we lost him. It still feels surreal. But I just wanted to let anyone who sees this know I'm doing quite okay. I'm working full time. I've started a new hobby and make an effort to spend time with people I love. Most importantly, I realize there's days where I'm enjoying myself again, and I'm so grateful for that. Don't get me wrong. It's still so hard. I miss him every day. I still go to therapy weekly, but I feel like slowly I'm moving in the right direction. Dating is off the table, and that's okay, because I have the best dog to keep me company. Thank you all so much for caring and letting me know and letting be my grieving self here. You've made a huge difference for this stranger. All the love." And like the OP said, this was the last post they ever posted to their profile. And just what a horrible, horrible situation. I mean, it started out as everyone wondering whether this was a manipulation tactic or, schizophrenia or some other, more explainable happening, that why he was acting so weird, why he was thinking the OP was pregnant when she wasn't. And it ended up being a brain tumor that ended up killing him shortly after. And it's just, life is very unfair. It really is. I mean, like, the OP didn't deserve this. The OP's husband didn't deserve this. It's just very, it brings up a lot of questions for, why things like that happen. But, I don't know. I'm just kind of speaking here, but, like I said, when I first read the title, this was a very disturbing and depressing Reddit thread. And, I'd like to hear what you guys think down below about this. And, I just hope that the OP and her family can find some find some peace, and I hope that the OP's husband rests in peace. Just such a sad, sad situation that, I was not expecting when I first read through that first post. I'm like, oh, is this some sort of, just weird guy? And it just, takes a turn like that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just yapping, but yeah, super, super depressing. But on to the next one. Am I the asshole for refusing to host Easter dinner if my nephew is invited? Throwaway because wife knows my account. I, 37, and my wife, 35, have been arguing about this all week. Our nephew, who is 22, has always been troubled. Even though sister-in-law, 44, and brother-in-law, 48, have always treated him well. Some examples of his unsettling behavior. He was caught feeding one of brother-in-law's horses avocados, poisonous to horses to make it sick. I have dogs and don't want him to hurt them as well. He demands to be called the names of 2 specific fictional characters. He believes he is these characters, reincarnated. If you call him by his real name or refuse to go along with his illusions, he becomes aggressive. He carries around a plushie of one of these characters everywhere. There is a hole in the back. The hole is stained. I have tried not to jump to conclusions about what he does to that plushie and failed. It smells rancid, and honestly, just thinking about the thing makes me want to vomit. I've tried so hard to be patient with his quirks, as my wife puts it. But what really pushed me over the edge was an incident that occurred a few weeks ago. For context, wife has struggled with infertility for our entire marriage, and we have given up on having our own kid until we recently discovered she is pregnant. Given the fact that she is 35, we have been surprised and overjoyed. A few weeks ago, wife started randomly getting rude texts from nephew, insulting our baby. One text implied that our baby would have fetal alcohol syndrome due to my wife's previous drinking problem. Even though she has been sober for years, I wanted to call up that insensitive brat and tear into him. But wife insisted we gently let him know via text that we didn't appreciate his comments. When he kept going and my wife started crying, I called sister-in-law. She was able to shut him down and get him to apologize. I have no idea what the hell got into him, but I suspect it has to do with his hatred of women. Wife believes that he may be on the spectrum / have undiagnosed mental illness and that he needs to be treated patiently. I think he has been coddled his entire life, and it has only made him worse. I think if someone doesn't put their foot down, his behavior will escalate into something dangerous. Here's where I may be the asshole. Each year, wife and I host Easter dinner for her entire family. Wife has already forgiven nephew for the incident and is insisting we invite him so that he isn't isolated from his family, something she believes will worsen his behavior. I see her reasoning, but enough is enough. I refused. I said she is being a doormat like everyone else in the family when it comes to him, and that our man-child of a nephew can't just make her cry and get away with it with an empty apology. Some of my friends are saying that I am being controlling and that I can't stop her from seeing her own family. I feel like I'm going insane. Am I the asshole? And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says he has a history of poisoning. He has a history of hating women. He has a history of mentally abusing your wife. He has a history of saying the baby will have birth defects. It seems like it would be fully within his capabilities to poison your wife to hurt the baby. Sounds crazy, but this guy definitely is. And the OP responds and says
This is exactly what I'm afraid of. I feel like nobody in the family wants to admit that his problems aren't just him having quirks. They're warning signs of potentially dangerous behavior later on, and they need to be dealt with. I'm glad I'm not alone in thinking this. I was starting to wonder if I was overreacting. Like the plushie thing and him thinking he is certain fictional characters is one thing, but the animal cruelty and anger towards women is what really has me concerned. Another commenter says, yes, the animal cruelty is a clear sign of him being an actual psychopath. The issue is how to make your wife see this without pushing it. Most people don't want to believe their family is capable of such cruelty. You'll have to be very, very gentle if you intend to discuss it at all. Worst comes to worst, very carefully watch the food and drinks. Personally, I can't believe anyone in the family puts up with that utterly disgusting plushie. I mean, how can they expect you to bring your future child around that? And the OP responds and says, his parents got it for him when he was a kid. They thought it was cute when he brought it everywhere. I think on some level, they still see him as a child, so they kind of refuse to acknowledge what he does to that thing. Another commenter says, not the asshole, but honestly, the whole family are for allowing this to continue. How long has he behaved like this for? I can't believe no one has taken him to a doctor. I mean, just the fact that this adult man is carrying around a stinky, stained plushie of a fictional character is bad enough, but then trying to hurt a horse? And no one thinks that's worth looking into? And the OP responds and says, his mom does try to push him to go to therapy and to get a job, and he usually will get a therapist for a few weeks. And then she is back to begging him to get therapy. She didn't want to push him when he was younger, but now that he is an adult, she cannot make him do anything. At least he has learned, after getting fired for this previously, not to take his plushie to the job he manages to hold down for a month or two. And then some people ask if the OP knows if he's harmed or hurt any other animals. And the OP says, I do not know if he has harmed other animals. He was actually vegan for a few months at one point, and was very anti-animal cruelty. I don't know why he flipped and tried to hurt one of the horses. And honestly, the fact that he can go against his own supposed values like that also scares me. I think I need to emphasize to my wife that this is a matter of safety rather than me just being mad at our nephew for his comments, although that is also a part of it. My wife has always wanted kids so badly, and before she got pregnant, I think she projected a bit of that onto her nephew as we watched him a decent amount when he was younger. I get that he's family and she loves him, and it's hard to admit that someone you love could be a danger to you, but she also has our baby to think about. I think I will show her these comments in the morning after I make her teen apologize for calling her a doormat / getting upset while arguing. I need to approach this a bit more gently, as you guys are confirming for me that it really is more serious than him just being rude. And then the OP makes an update 13 hours later, and let's get into it. The update reads, my wife and I had a long talk this morning in which I made it clear that I was more concerned about her and our baby's safety than anything. I also apologized for resorting to name calling last night. Wife isn't a doormat. She just has a lot of love and patience for her family. It was a hard talk with some tears from both of us, but she agreed that this has escalated to a point that may become dangerous, in part due to the enabling from all of us. Honestly, I am also guilty of coddling him, especially when he was a kid. It's hard to admit when someone you took care of as a kid has grown into someone unsafe to be around, but I think the idea in this comment might work as a way to set boundaries without shutting him off permanently. We are going to call his mother and explained that Easter dinner isn't happening this year if the nephew is coming, and that he is welcome to come over when he has a diagnosis and is stuck with a therapist for at least a couple of months. Thank you all for your advice. And then we get an update post about 2 weeks later, and let's get into it. This series of bizarre events started on Easter and has only gotten weirder since. For those of you who did not read / don't remember my original post, my nephew was banned from our recent Easter dinner due to a concerning pattern of behavior, including recent disturbing text messages to my pregnant wife about her unborn child. Since then, his parents eventually agreed to not bring him after a lot of arguing. Sister-in-law, nephew's mother, eventually admitted that he may need professional help and that wife and I may have some reason to be worried for our safety around him. That's concerning. And on Easter, our worries were proven more than reasonable. He showed up uninvited, using brother-in-law's car. His parents came in sister-in-law's car. Our dinner was interrupted by aggressive pounding on our door. I don't know how to put this without it sounding insane, so here it goes. Nephew was at our door, holding a sword and dressed as the Joker. He tried to say something, but I slammed the door in his face and told everyone inside what was going on. Chaos, predictably, ensued. Brother-in-law, a generally calm guy who I have never seen freak out or get angry, turned beet red and went outside. He ended up literally chasing nephew around our house, screaming at him in an attempt to get him to leave. Neighbors came outside and sister-in-law went into damage control mode, talking down one concerned neighbor from calling the police somehow. He dropped his sword in the chase and brother-in-law tackled him on our front lawn. They got him into sister-in-law's car somehow and they left with him. Easter dinner was ruined. Wife was in tears. I was so mad. I was shaking. Good news is that this was a wake-up call for sister-in-law and brother-in-law. Under threat of them withdrawing financial support, nephew has agreed to seek therapy and surrender access to his Tumblr blog, which he previously would spend hours a day posting on. His mother went through it and found a lot of alarming posts, including content about his hatred for women, screenshots posted of his text exchange with my wife with captions bragging about his hurtful behavior, and several disturbing fan fictions with violent, intimate content. They believe him being too online is worsening his behavior and are hoping that limiting his access and forcing him into therapy will help. Thank you for all who convinced me to stand my ground in the comments of my original post. And now let's get into some of the top comments. Someone says, I think it's a little more than seeing a therapist and we take away a little social media. That young man needed the cops called and a 5150 hold. I hope y'all start putting things like security measures in place. Good luck, and you're still not the asshole. And the OP respondent says, I might suggest that 5150 hold to his parents, but his mother is already worried that taking away his phone was too much, as if he didn't show up at my house with a weapon. And another user says, not the asshole. Look, for all I care, you can be a rabbit identifying as a frog or believe you are Superman. If you aren't hurting anyone and can function in society, have at it, but this guy is scary and dangerous. He hurts animals, hates women, and has a false sense of reality. The family has enabled this behavior for years. Nope, I wouldn't want him anywhere near your pregnant wife, and later your child. He is going to hurt someone. And the OP responds and says, funnily enough, you almost guessed which two characters he identifies as. Kermit, the Frog to be exact. Yes, as in the Muppet, and the Joker. Not Superman, but from the same source material. And then one commenter actually finds the OP's nephew's Tumblr account, and I'm not going to expose what the username is or the link to their profile, but I'm going to read a few posts from here because, yeah, it is weird, disturbing, and just strange. One of his posts reads, "I still have hot glue burns all over my mouth from trying to kiss my sock puppet with tongue while the glue was still wet. It's kind of like my own personal Joker scars. Guess this is my life now. The clown paint just never comes off. I feel more badass than ever before." And also, other posts confirm that the plushie he has was being used for what the OP was, thinking it was being used for. Yeah, just gross, weird, really, really weird. I mean, I just keep scrolling through this post or just through this profile, and very strange. He has such a interest in puppets, Kermit the Frog, and the Joker. It is very, very strange. And there's actually a picture of his doll, which is Kermit dressed as the Joker. Very, very strange. And then we get an update 8 days later from the OP, and the update is titled Final Update, hopefully. First and second post of my profile for those of you who are out of the loop. Thank you for the kind messages and advice in the comments. The situation is being taken seriously by brother-in-law, wife, and myself. Sister-in-law still has her head buried in the sand a bit, but we are working on it. At the very least, she has not lifted the phone ban, and she has been looking through his Tumblr as well as his other social media to see if he really had violent intentions on Easter. Sister-in-law still believes nephew that he only came to talk. In any case, he had his first therapy session with the new therapist this week. He has promised to stick with it, mostly because sister-in-law said she would return his phone if he stuck with it long enough. Not sure how long enough is. The plus side of him being a man-child is that he is either unwilling to just buy himself a new phone with the little money he has, or he doesn't realize that he is an adult who can gain financial independence, so his mother can't threaten to take things away from him like he's a child in timeout. He has told his mom to tell us that he's very sorry for his behavior and that it won't happen again. I'm skeptical. Wife is still holding out hope but refuses to see him unless he shows substantial improvement. Brother-in-law is looking into resources for places he can get nephew committed should that become necessary, but he believes that the situation is under control as long as sister-in-law doesn't budge. They have also confiscated his sword, and I don't think he has any access to other weapons. I was also sent a link to nephew's Tumblr blog. Sister-in-law has already seen it on his phone, but did not want to share its contents because she feels like we have villainized her baby enough. I went through his blog with my wife and didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or pour bleach into my eyeballs. His blog basically confirmed what you all have been trying to tell me about his pattern of violence and hatred for women. He posts a lot about how females are all entitled and how he hates ever having to interact with them. Additionally, he seems to be stalking one of his exes, which is a whole other layer of concerning. He also writes intimately explicit fan fiction about Muppets, which is not a safety concern but has permanently ruined the entire show for me. Sorry this update isn't very exciting, but a lot of people express concern for my family and I's safety, so I'm letting you all know the situation is being handled and everyone is okay. For those wondering about the plushie of Kermit, it has gone missing according to sister-in-law and brother-in-law. I hope it stays missing forever. And now let's get into some of the top comments.
One user says, "Hi OP, you had correct instincts here. Nephew is absolutely mentally unwell. The patterns of violence scares me to even read. The thing about the horses? If he was trying to feed it avocados to make it sick, he could have killed it. Horses can't vomit. The Muppet fanfiction and the other sort of plushie is so gross. That's something that is beyond a little unwell. People who believe in that stuff are largely mentally unwell, and especially if he decided he's doing it is a literal psycho murderer. I am wondering if he is suffering from some sort of delusional disorder. Granted, that is for the therapists to decide. I agree with the others who've mentioned it. You should invest in a Ring doorbell or other security devices. He might get his phone back and blame you for everything. I looked at his Tumblr and people commented on his Tumblr to blast him, and some people mentioned the Reddit post. If his brain works and with some Googling, he could find these posts. Hope for the best and assume the worst here. I dearly hope sister-in-law will take more action. The nephew is going to seriously hurt someone." I also found the post about the horse on Tumblr, and the OP's nephew post on Tumblr reads as follows. It says, "My father's favorite horse has gotten mysteriously ill. If he dies, maybe I will finally be the favorite son instead of playing second fiddle to an animal." And someone replies and says, "There's so much on there about the horses and his hatred for them. All the logical signs point to him. He 100% did attempt to kill it. In the hashtags, I was starting to get really freaked out as someone with my own horse. I really hope OP is safe and taking precautions." And then the OP actually makes a mini update to their post and says, "Edit, people are messaging me saying that he is back to updating his Tumblr account. So that likely means that sister-in-law has gone back on her word. I'm going to call brother-in-law and update him. Also, he is still hiding the plushie somewhere because brother-in-law was trying to throw it away and he can't find it anywhere." And then the OP comes back with another update titled "More Updates," unfortunately, and it reads as follows. "Sorry for the lack of updates. Life has been a bit crazy. Wife and I went no contact with nephew and sister-in-law, which has been hard on wife because she has always been close with her sister. We have kept contact with brother-in-law, keeping him updated if we saw anything concerning on his Tumblr account, as many of you have kept me updated. And boy, did he post concerning stuff. I'm not sure what the last straw was. Possibly when he posted about cutting off part of his coworker's hair and getting fired as a result. But brother-in-law decided he had had enough of sister-in-law's permissive parenting and nephew's destructive behavior going ignored. Brother-in-law has been trying to go harsher on nephew to straighten him out. But sister-in-law throws such a tantrum every time he has tried that he has decided he's had enough. A few days ago, he packed up and left. Now it looks like he and sister-in-law are going to get a divorce. He has been staying with us for a few days, going back once to make sure his horses were put in temporary boarding while he figures his stuff out. He is also working on getting a lawyer. In other news, my nephew has run away from home. He is 22, so I don't know if this means he has finally gotten an apartment or what. All I know is a few hours ago, sister-in-law called brother-in-law in hysterics, crying that he had left a note and that it was brother-in-law's fault. I think that he may have gone to stay with some internet friends, but wife is getting worried as it is 3 a.m. and there is still no sign of him. Actually, I also kind of worried, but I'm trying to stay level-headed and not think of worst-case scenarios. Sorry if this is unclear and sounds rushed, but stuff is still unfolding and this has been a lot to deal with. I will answer any questions y'all have once everything calms down a bit. Edit. Several hours after I made this post, police found nephew in a small forest a few blocks away. He was hiding in the trees and I guess he was going to try to live there. They returned him to his mom's house. I am exhausted. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, okay, can we also note how weird sister-in-law is being? Why is she acting but also treating like her son is 10? It's weird. It's like she also has some weird mental problems with her son. Like, it's odd and not normal to act this way about a 22-year-old man, who is also her son. Like, it's giving me an icky boy mom vibes in a very gross way. Also, kudos to your brother-in-law for finally taking some much needed action. Also, I think you should contact the police. Get everything on file. Nephew may come after police now that he has ran off. He is a danger to others. Stay safe, OP. And someone else says, his Tumblr has a post about how he's going to live in the woods and hope that your brother-in-law will return home. He also has one about collecting herbs and berries to eat in the woods, and that one seems very disturbing. Apparently, he believes he has a natural survival instinct. I don't know if he has done a lot of camping, but I would be concerned since his reality seems not that existent. The fact that your sister-in-law is throwing tantrums unfortunately shows that she is to blame for his behavior. And someone else says, I mentioned a 5150 hold in the comments on your first or second post. Your brother-in-law should be calling the police, and hopefully, if they find him, he can be assessed more seriously than his current voluntary therapy sessions. He needs a psychiatric evaluation and treatment, for sure. And then the OP makes another update a few days later titled, Jesus Christ, when will it end? And let's get into it. It reads, at this point, I'm just going to use this account to rant about my insane nephew because venting to my wife just makes her sad about the person he has grown into, which I think is completely fair. So the good news is that sister-in-law has finally taken action. Brother-in-law has been keeping up with nephew's posts online ever since he found brother-in-law's new apartment and took a crap outside his front door. Long story short, and not super relevant to this current update. Point is, brother-in-law was monitoring the situation from a safe distance and was able to find proof that nephew was becoming dangerous to others. Finally convincing sister-in-law, after some painful conversations and damning screenshots from his blog, that something needed to be done. The screenshots in particular were a series of posts that nephew made in which he challenged a random person online to a duel, giving an exact time and location as well as promising to bring his goddamn sword, unfortunately threatening to attack people with swords has become a behavioral pattern for him, so I can't even find it in me to be surprised. I am just so goddamn tired at this point. As some of you smart cookies may already know, telling a large amount of people on the internet your exact location is, drumroll please, stupid and dangerous, especially with the threat of violence, which eventually expanded to him threatening to attack everyone and everything who challenged him at the location he specified. This was his mom's breaking point. So when nephew asked sister-in-law to drive him to his duel, she instead took him to their church. Yep, not therapy, not the police, an evangelical church. A different church than the one sister-in-law goes to because he was banned from that one. Also a long story. He is once again on the internet timeout and being forced to meet with the pastor once every week to bring him back to Jesus or whatever. So at least something is being done. Is this at least a step in the right direction for sister-in-law? I don't even know anymore. And then the OP doesn't update us for a few months, but a few months later, the OP comes back with another post titled Thanksgiving, and it reads as follows.
I'm pretty sure that no one is still invested in my petty family drama at this point, but Reddit was a good outlet the last time my nephew showed up to a holiday meal and completely ruined it. So to Reddit, I return. Read my other post if you are out of the loop, I guess. First of all, my son was born in early November, and his presence had been such an overwhelming joy in my wife and I's life. We had been so busy with him that we hadn't even thought about whether nephew would be at Thanksgiving until the days leading up to it. We called mother-in-law, who was hosting, and she reassured us he was staying behind and that it was only going to be us and sister-in-law. Small Thanksgiving, but yeah, mother-in-law does not have a lot of family, so we always try to make it to her house when she hosts. Brother-in-law and nephew usually attend as well, but sister-in-law and brother-in-law are recently divorced, and nephew is, well, a danger to society, to put it mildly. So we head over to our house early in the morning for a humble Thanksgiving of 5. Myself, wife, son, sister-in-law, and mother-in-law arriving first. Mother-in-law is cooing over her grandson and holding him when the doorbell rings. In steps sister-in-law, and in steps nephew. Not wearing Joker makeup this time or holding his special plushie, thank God. I am immediately out of my chair, ready to rain fire down and tell this man to get away from here before he has some kind of violent outburst around my newborn. When mother-in-law cuts me off, asking nephew if there is anything he would like to say to my wife and I. Nephew approaches me with a very serious look in his eye, bows at a 90-degree angle, and begins rattling off this insane apology, most of which is being directed at the floor. I really did not catch most of it, but my wife squeezed my hand and looked at me with tears in her eyes. I know you will call me stupid, Reddit, but my hormonal, recently pregnant wife was almost crying with how happy she was to see that nephew had grown as a person. And she had told me earlier in her pregnancy that she hoped our baby would be able to play with him and look up to his older cousin. My wife has taken no contact with our nephew rather hard, as we looked after him a lot when he was little, and I cannot really blame her for folding immediately upon seeing him again. I accepted nephew's apology for his outburst earlier in the year and told him that all family is welcome at Thanksgiving. My wife hugged me, and mother-in-law started saying how excited she was to have both of her grandchildren with her. I kind of got the sense that mother-in-law and sister-in-law planned this behind our backs, but for the sake of the holiday, I was willing to let it go. Maybe he changed. The first hiccup was when mother-in-law was in the kitchen taking the turkey out of the oven. Sister-in-law was holding our son and asked if nephew could hold him. Wife and I firmly said no, but agreed that he could say hi. Nephew leaned in close to get a good look at our newborn and began laughing like a psycho. Like, from completely silent to cackling maniacally. He startled my son into crying, and when I reprimanded him, he did not seem apologetic at all, and instead kept doing that weird laugh and saying, "I cannot contain the Joker." I admit I started to lose my cool at that point. I told him he needs to grow up and stop acting like a creep all the time, which seemed to really piss him off. He yelled that he is not a creep and that he has changed a lot since I last saw him. He said that he found God and that he is not a misogynist anymore because he claimed that men are just as vile and humanity is doomed no matter the gender. I called him a mistake and he grabbed the turkey, which mother-in-law had just brought in during the commotion, by the leg. Shrieking at the top of his lungs, nephew swung the turkey like a sledgehammer directly at my head. Mother-in-law stepped in to intervene, which caused the hot, oven-fresh turkey to slam wetly into her hand. Silence for a moment. Then the sizzling of my mother-in-law's skin as the grease of the turkey, sticking to her face, made quick work of her epidermis, causing her to scream. I regret that I was completely stunned into inaction, but luckily my wife came to her senses quicker than I did. and it was now her turn to chase down my nephew, much like how brother-in-law had this past Easter. She was not as fast as him, given that she had given birth earlier that month, but her yells and threats scared him bad enough that he fled out the door, sister-in-law on his heels. She ended up driving him home, shooting us a nasty text saying my wife overreacted and that his outburst was my fault in the first place. That's crazy. Apparently, we scared her beloved baby boy, 22 years old, so bad that he pissed himself, so I guess he's the real victim. Wife and I took mother-in-law to urgent care, and she has insisted that no charges should be pressed against nephew, even though her face is severely burned from the turkey grease and the impact of the swing gave her a concussion. Oh my God, this guy needs to be locked up. She's not even mad at him and says he is just troubled and that, quote, everyone makes mistakes. I think our mistake was believing my wife, and I can trust her family to stop inviting unstable people around our newborn. I don't want to cut mother-in-law off because she is old and lonely, but I don't want her around our newborn because I do not trust that she will not invite nephew. That being said, I do not want to keep her away from her grandbaby. Now, I know this was long and probably no one's reading this, but if anyone has any advice for how to proceed, I really would appreciate it. And before we get into the comments, like, the OP and his wife are so lucky that the nephew didn't want to attack the newborn baby for whatever reason, you know? Like, it's not good that he swung a turkey and gave his, I guess it would be his grandma, a concussion. Like, obviously that's not good. That's horrible. But, like, thank God he didn't swing the turkey at the baby or freak out and grab the baby or do whatever. I mean, he was wanting to hold the baby. That's terrifying. I mean, he could have easily dropped it or done something horrible. I mean, this guy is a complete psychopath. But let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, unfortunately, I keep up with your nephew's Tumblr account. I think it is against your child's best interest and safety to let him or anyone who defends him in your child's life. There is something very, very wrong with your nephew, and I understand that psych holds did nothing but cause more drama. My suggestion, do not let any of them near your house. If you choose to meet with mother-in-law, it should be in a public place where you can leave, and maybe somewhere with security cameras. If you don't already have security cameras, get them. If possible, get a restraining order against him. Use mother-in-law's urgent care release papers as part of evidence. Do not forgive or relax your guard around him. Don't let your guard down around sister-in-law. Don't let your guard down around mother-in-law. They are supporting a man who is very psychologically unhinged, has a history of threatening behavior and assault. Obviously, it's sad that mother-in-law won't be around for her grandbaby and that she's lonely. Tough luck. She's choosing someone who I can't describe without getting banned from this platform. Good luck. I'm sorry your wife has such a horrible family. Also, it seems as though your nephew may want to dox your baby. Obviously, I cannot trust that Tumblr for any facts, but everything on there is so unhinged. I cannot tell if it's a joke or a threat. And the OP responds and says, this is good advice. Thank you. I think my wife's family has always been crazy and has a history of excusing bad behavior, particularly from men. So she is a little desensitized to it. Honestly, dealing with my in-laws had normalized this kind of behavior for me too, to some extent. I was unaware my nephew still had an online presence. I will call his mom, not that she'll listen, about this threats of doxing, even if I am confused about what the hell doxing a baby would even accomplish. And someone else says, your wife has to accept that he is a danger to all of you. If she cannot, then you're gonna have to make some tough choices because you can't keep going on like this.
And someone else says, your choice is to protect your son or not. Your mother-in-law and sister-in-law refuse to acknowledge that this guy is dangerous. That makes them just as dangerous. Worse, as they enable him and manipulate you and your wife with absolutely no effort. So keep your son safe, or see if it's your baby being flung by the leg next time. Make your choice. I can't believe it's even a hard choice. Get security cameras and don't ever go to mother-in-law's home again. She's also not allowed at your home. No more ambushes. She can see baby at Starbucks if you're so reckless as to keep contact with someone who knowingly and willfully manipulated you into endangering the safety of your baby. Why you stayed when he walked in the door is just the most ridiculously dangerous and bad thing, but it can't happen again. Your mother-in-law does not care enough or respect either of you enough to even protect a newborn. You're the kid's parents. Do better. And this is the last update we have ever received from the OP. And man, I really wonder how this entire saga ended. I wonder if the OP's nephew ended up in prison or jail or in a psych ward somewhere, or I don't know. But what I do know is that the OP's nephew is still posting on his Tumblr. Like I said, I'm not going to link the profile. I'm not going to do anything. Do not contact anyone mentioned in this video. But man, this Tumblr account is beyond disturbing. I can't tell if it's a joke or if he's crazy, but from the entire story we just read and the thread we just got into, it does not seem like a joke. Yeah, this is just the most unhinged Tumblr account I have ever seen before. Like, it's just so weird. Like I said, it's a mix of, Muppet, Kermit the Frog, and the Joker. And he likes the Muppets and wants to make love with the Muppets. Yeah. This is just one of the most insane Reddit threads I have ever read. And yeah, on to the next one. Ayahuasca ruined my life. Originally posted to r/DMT and r/psychosis. And for those of you who don't know what ayahuasca is a traditional psychoactive brew that's been used for centuries by indigenous people of the Amazon rainforest, mainly for spiritual, ceremonial, and healing purposes. And basically, it is a very, very intense psychedelic experience that gives you vivid visions and deep emotional introspection, and just an altered state of consciousness lasting 4 to 8 hours. And many people do ayahuasca for personal growth or being able to look inwards or for mental health challenges. Although doing ayahuasca isn't risk-free, and ayahuasca can trigger severe anxiety or panic that lasts a long time, it can increase confusion, impaired judgment, and prolonged psychological distress. And in some people, especially those with a personal or family history of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or other psychotic disorders, ayahuasca actually can trigger psychosis or mania. And obviously, that is not good. And it can be very, very dangerous, and you can lose your mind. But without further ado, let's get into the story. I just wanted to make sure you guys know what ayahuasca was for those of you who don't know. And the Reddit post is titled, Ayahuasca Ruined My Life. My story. What happened in this ceremony in Costa Rica? My mind and perception was bouncing back and forth between good and evil. I would see and feel complete magic and light to complete darkness. Eventually, all the light went away, and I became separate from everything and everyone. There was just a void. My personality changed into something else, something terrible. I'm the ceremony, I actually ran away. I left the ceremony thinking that I was also leaving my life and I would try again in a different lifetime. I felt I had failed life, and my external environment became extremely uncomfortable and unpleasant. The energy in my body felt like poison. Every sound hurt my ears, and even the food tasted bad. I became the ugliest version of myself that I didn't even recognize. I was going through a lot in life at the time, and perhaps it was not a good time for me to go, but who knows why this happened. The psyche is fragile, and things can easily go wrong no matter how prepared you are. Psychedelic psychosis is more common than I knew at the time. After the ceremony, the effects of the ayahuasca did not wear off. They actually became stronger over time. My mind was completely taken over that I could not identify with myself anymore. My mind would break and shatter apart over and over. I would get this constant stream of negative thoughts piercing my head for months, changing my personality over time. I started losing my memories, my values, my perceptions, my mind. I was working with 2 medicine men, but nothing seemed to help. I did everything I could to hold on to myself, but eventually my mind got so hijacked that my former self stopped existing. Intense energy sizzled through my body, and I could not sleep for weeks. My thoughts made me believe I was not ascending, and I'd be trapped in hell for all eternity. I was kicked out of the ceremony of life and was disconnected from life, my heart and spirit. My heart would constantly pound in my chest, my body would shake uncontrollably, and my brain would hurt. My perception of time was completely gone. I do not even remember the plane ride home. I ended up in the hospital from going manic and from constantly screaming that I was doomed for eternity and I would be going to hell. I was constantly planning my own S-word. All I could perceive was how I was going to be tortured for eternity, from the sounds of chainsaws to dogs barking to my teeth falling out and being burned. I was traumatized with fear. I would throw up from screaming for hours, stuck in loops, pacing for hours in distress. I ended up in the emergency 3 times for manic episodes and eventually the psych ward. I have never had mental illness in the past. Now I find it hard to leave the house as I now have major anxiety, depression, and fear. Since then, 8 months later, I no longer feel the effects of ayahuasca and have stabilized, but who I am now compared to who I was is very different. I feel completely disconnected from my heart and spirit. I cannot find joy in anything anymore, not even nature or music. I constantly feel jumbled and confused in this utter lifelessness. All of my thoughts are now negative, and I can't feel anything anymore. I don't feel my emotions except fear and despair. Plus, my creativity is gone. It's like I'm living without my soul. I have no motivation or interests anymore. Just getting out of bed is difficult. I lost my business as an artist and partner through this whole experience. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, were you taking any psych meds prior to the experience? What you're describing is post-manic depression. The same thing happened to me, both SSRI, and I also lost everything. And the OP responds and says, I wasn't on any medication before. I've never had any mental illnesses prior. I'm so sorry that happened to you. I keep hearing more people talk about these encounters, but only after it happened. And the commenter replied again and said, I have heard that even if you have a mild undiagnosed psychotic disorder, So think bipolar, which is fairly common. Psychedelics can trigger a sharp onset. And the OP replies and says, "For sure, but I have done ayahuasca 5 times prior and nothing was triggered." Another user says, "This is happening more and more often since all these shamans that are supposed to protect the ceremony space don't know how to do it and leave people open to energetic parasitism. The only way to heal this is unfortunately through the same plant medicine. Make sure you have a real shaman this time who can identify and remove the pathogen that is now attached to your soul. These things thrive on such energy. You can take ownership of your own being again. However, it will take a long time. If you don't want to consider plant medicine again, some sort of meditation over many years would slowly but surely make space for the real you to inhabit your mind and body again." And the OP replies and says, "I'm worried that taking plant medicine again will make me worse. I was only considering it if I don't see any progress in a year." And one commenter smartly says, "Don't take it again. Fight for footing in the reality you have." And I agree. I don't think the OP should go back and take that medicine or take the ayahuasca since it made her worse. I think she should, see a psychiatrist or therapist or go to the hospital because she clearly has triggered something serious. Another commenter says, "Any history of bipolar, manic episodes of schizophrenia before this? What you describe happened to me, but I didn't even drink ayahuasca. Was from my traumas surfacing for me to deal with after I got off a lifetime of SSRIs and had a breakdown." And the OP says, "No mental illness before this." And another commenter says, "I'm really sorry to hear about this. Must be horrifying to have your life stripped away from you and feel so empty inside. Deep down, I'm wishing you well and that you pull through this." There are a few points, though, that I'd like to share. First, my childhood friend had something similar happen to him when he was 19. He tripped on mushrooms, and he went to a very, very dark place from which he didn't fully return for years. He gradually faded from my life, largely because I was living overseas. But when I returned home a few years later, I contacted him and we reunited. He was a sober, solid dude that oozed gravitas. There's no guarantee how this will turn out, but recovery is possible. Hang in there. Second, there's a lot of blaming going around, which I find frustrating and naive. You must have had some underlying mental illness, the shaman was bad, the medicine was bad, you needed to do more shadow work, blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, but while that can be to blame, another aspect that is that powerful medicine also carries powerful side effects. Having a bad trip is an intrinsic risk of ayahuasca. Everything might have been good. You might have done what you needed. You just hit the lottery and have to deal with it. From what you've written, it's not worth nitpicking about what it could have been. I suggest you just go on with your life, and in that, I wish you all the best. And the OP replied and said, "Thank you for your reply. I agree. You don't know what you're going to get, and sometimes things go south. It's a risk. I never in a million years thought this could happen, yet here we are. It was my fault for not doing enough research ahead of time. I'd never even heard of people getting hospitalized because of it. People only like to talk about the good stuff. Hence why I'm posting my experience to spread awareness that things can go wrong even if you feel safe going into it." And then we don't get an update for about 2 months, but 2 months later, the OP comes back with another post titled "Ayahuasca Warning." And let's get into it. 9 months after ceremony, and it's like my whole life has been taken from me. I used to be filled with love, joy, and creativity, and now my cup is completely empty. It's like living without the soul. I can't even enjoy music anymore, which used to be my everything. I feel foolish for taking the medicine when I don't need it. I think of my past self every day, and I wish I could have that bright light back. I only live in the shadows, now hidden away. It's humiliating to lose everything and feel hopeless for it to return. I almost committed S-word 4 months after the ceremony when the psychosis never ended, and now I'm terrified of death, as I could constantly only perceive that I would spend eternity in hell. This has been worse than a nightmare. Choose wisely if the medicine is right for you. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, posting this continuously will not make it go away. You are just instilling fear in people that would benefit from the medicine. I would strongly suggest you go and have another ceremony with a proper shaman that can diagnose attachments and remove them. Your case sounds like a typical case of energetic parasitism. These things feed on your misery. And the OP replies and says, I'm just trying to spread awareness. I know this medicine can save lives, but it can also ruin them. If I heard the horror stories that I'm hearing now from people, I would have taken more precaution. And I am reading this story right now for you guys for that sole purpose of, sharing this OP story and making you guys know as well the risks of taking such drugs. I mean, I really don't like how this one commenter said, go take more of the drug that hurts you. I don't think doubling down would do any good. I think the OP just needs to consistently go to therapy, go to a psychiatrist, and really try to work this out with more proven methods, I would say. I'm not saying like all psychedelic usage is bad, but there are risks. And for some reason, a lot of those risks are kind of, thrown to the wayside. I feel like people don't talk about the possible risks of psychedelic use often. And so everyone watching, if you're ever, thinking about partaking in psychedelics, please do your research and be wary that, it's not all sunshine and rainbows and things can go bad and possibly ruin your life. But then the OP posts another update one day after, and the post is titled, Never Live a Normal Life Again. And this post also includes a picture of a barren looking tree in the middle of nowhere. I don't really understand the meaning of that, but I just thought that was worth adding because the OP posted that alongside it. And the post reads, Hi everyone. I went to an ayahuasca ceremony on my birthday last year. I went into a very intense psychosis that was extremely amplified by the medicine and lasted for half a year. It was terrifying. My personality and thoughts were completely changed, and it got so bad that my body would convulse uncontrollably and my heart would pound and hurt. I didn't sleep for 2 weeks. It's completely ruined my life. Since then, I've stabilized, but I lost everything. My dance/music businesses, my partner, and now my soul tribe is falling away. I've never wanted to die before, but I just feel like a zombie. I'm terrified of death now to feel lost in this new personality and loop for eternity. It's been like a horror show. I can't believe this happens to people, and it's shattering that it does. I just want to be myself again, to feel free again. My heart goes to all of you who battle with this. Giving up has never been an option for me, but holy shit, it's not living when you're like this. And man, it's just so depressing. I mean, the OP said, I want to be myself again. And it's so terrifying to think that, you can get lost in your own mind, which is what happened to the OP. Like the OP doesn't feel like themselves. They have lost a piece of themselves. And that is so sad and so scary. And then the OP posts 1.5 months later, titled, The Aftermath of Going Through a Drug-Induced Psychosis. Can anyone relate? Imagine humans were trees, growing, reaching, fruiting. As we get older, so do the branches, the leaves, the flowers, becoming older, wiser, stronger, more resilient, started to become unique, a home. Each part that grows and births a new creation of life represents a different path, value, interest, dream, skill, creative aspiration, etc. Like a library of everything that makes up who we are and who we've decided we want to be. Then one day, we get struck by friggin' lightning. Everything dies. All the work of becoming gone. All the fruit bared falls to the ground, and we are left unclothed, dead, with no way to get back what was destroyed. The roots stay in the ground and connections remain, but we will never become the ancient tree that we could have, should have, or grown to be. This tree has been shocked and traumatized. Life will inevitably grow again, but it won't ever be the same. That empty, hollowed, burned tree will always be a part of that lifetime. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "This is very eloquent and seems very accurate. Do you mind me asking how far on the other side of this you are? Was it a first episode? I hope you are healing." And then the OP responds and says, "It was my first episode that lasted about 6 months. I can work again, my memory's back, I can enjoy time with my friends. But it's like the richness of life is missing. Love music, art, nature, spirit. Like a cord has been cut between me and life. I honestly don't think there is an other side of me. Everything's just different now. I am different now. It's more of an acceptance of what is and gratitude that I can function in the world again." Another commenter says, 6 months is still quite young in recovery. It might also be worthwhile exploring if it's kicked up some other health issues if you can. Adrenal fatigue, if you're fighting back tears quite often, pseudo-bulbar effect might be kicking your arse, etc. My cortisol levels were all over the place for my first few years of recovery. I have found acupuncture and physical therapy have both been helpful for getting back into my life and body." And the OP responds and says, "The psychosis of whatever it was lasted 6 months. It has been a full year. It's just what it's like not being in it anymore." And then about 1 month later, the OP posts a post that's titled Afterlife. And they say, "What do you think of the afterlife? The scariest part of my psychosis was that it brought me to believe I would be stuck in an eternal loop of torture in a place called the void after I pass away. I actually experienced living in this place, in this reality for months. It was worse than any horror film. Now I am terrified of death. Sometimes I feel like I'm just waiting for my life to be over since the accident, but then what? The mystery of it all used to be so beautiful to me, but now my brain is so messed up I'm terrified of the unknown and my new belief systems. I've been very spiritual my whole life, and now prayer music, etc. is out of the question. Like my ability to connect with something greater now is non-existent and somehow doesn't apply anymore. Mostly because I experienced something that represents hell for so long, resulting in my emotions being cut off like love. It has been a whole year since I have felt love. Sorry for this little rant. Any thoughts?" And then no one comments on the OP's post here, but the OP disappears for a year. But a year later, the OP comes back and with an update, and let's get into it. Update. It's almost been a year and a half since the ceremony. I am relieved to say that I have come out of the other side. I really had no hope, but gracias a Dios, it changed. It was around the year mark when I finally felt in control of my mind again and could feel emotions other than fear and anger. I'm no longer on any medication and living life again. I am well enough to work, and I'm now traveling on my own and rediscovering myself and my connections to life. I've been dancing and singing again, and really pushing myself towards creativity and igniting that flame. We all have our own way through healing, and mine is definitely through dance and connections. I still don't feel as I once did, but there's been a huge acceptance of myself, and I've let go of a lot of regret. I did not do any special therapies. I actually feel I wasted a lot of money on different treatments. I just had to be patient and change my external environment for eventually the internal to change with it. I've gotten an overwhelming amount of people messaging me saying something similar has happened to them. I hope this post will help spread awareness so people can take this plant very seriously and know the risks. I also wanted to mention that what happened is no fault or doing of the shaman and the people holding the space. They do an incredible job and are very experienced. I respect and still love this community immensely. Things can go wrong no matter how well this space is being held. And this is the last we have ever heard from the OP, but God, just such a terrifying Reddit thread. I mean, I'm just happy she came out the other side and she finally feels like she is in control of her life again. But man, this could have been bad. I've read many Reddit posts of people taking whatever drug and it, triggers a psychosis of sorts and they lose everything. They lose their mind, they go crazy, they end up in jail or passed away or etc. I've heard this was the best case scenario, but hopefully this is a lesson for a lot of you watching. If you didn't know the risks of psychedelics, now you do. It is very risky, and if you ever do partake, please just know the risks. I'm not saying they're all bad, but personally, I just think it's important for you, to just spread this kind of message, that psychedelics and really any drug use has major risks that should not be, discounted. Yeah, I'm just super glad the OP is doing better now. I hope they have continued to improve their life and get their life back together. But yeah, on to the next one. Am I the asshole for calling my best friend creepy for sleeping with my little sister? Originally posted to Am I the Asshole? And the post reads as follows. Hi Reddit, I'm honestly at a loss right now and need some outsider perspective. So my 27 female parents died in a car accident a few months ago. And now my sister, Lily, 18 female, is staying with me at my apartment. I love having Lily here. I didn't get to see her as much after I moved to the city where we're currently living and my job. It was a much smoother transition than I expected. I reintroduced her to my best friend Cole, 27 male, almost right away, and they seemed to get along fairly well. My sister's birthday was in July, and the night after it, she went to a new 18-plus club that opened in our area. I didn't think much of it, and just wanted her to be safe. After that night, Lily seemed more stressed, and I assumed it was because of her first year at college coming up. She's taking online courses for the first year, and just tried to give her advice on how to handle it. Yesterday, after Cole came over to drop off some brownies he had baked, my sister came up to me with tears in her eyes and admitted that she had bumped into Cole on the night after her birthday, and they ended up sleeping together. I was shocked, but from how sad and ashamed Lily seemed, I asked if Cole had taken advantage of her. Lily said no and that it was 100% consensual, but Cole asked her to keep it a secret. Lily didn't want to stress me out and was afraid of me being mad at her, but she couldn't hold it in much longer. After reassuring Lily that I wasn't mad at her and that she was completely right for telling me, I went to my room and angrily called Cole. I yelled at him over the phone and told him how creepy it was that he had intimacy with my freshly 18-year-old sister, and that he was way too old to be messing around with girls her age. We went back and forth for a bit before finally hanging up, and I went back to talking to Lily about this.
Cole told his family and our mutual friends what happened. During the night and even this morning, I have been bombarded with texts from them saying that I was an ass for calling Cole creepy, and that since it was a consensual, intimate encounter with Lily being of age, it should not matter. I haven't shown Lily the texts. I don't want to make her feel worse than she already is. With how consistent everyone has been with calling me an a-hole, I'm wondering if I really am. So, am I the asshole for calling my best friend creepy for sleeping with my little sister? Edit. Yeah, I realized I made it sound like Cole and Lily only met after our parents' death, but she has known him before. Granted, they didn't talk much to my knowledge back then since she was a kid, and I didn't include her in what I was doing very often. Edit number 2, it's just Cole's mom, dad, and brother who are harassing me about this outside of our friends, and at this point, I think that he might have twisted the story for them to get this riled up over what I said. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, generally, I'm going to assume any story where a bunch of people who barely know text you to berate you is a fake story. I also think it's weird that your supposed best friend has never met your family before. And the OP responds and says, he has. He's known Lily since she was 3. I'm also close with his family, and like I said, it's our mutual friend group yelling at me for what I said. And another user says, you said in the story that you had introduced him to her when she moved in with you. Anyway, yes, if this is real, and he has really known her since she was a child, then it's creepy. And the OP responds and says, I meant reintroduced since she hasn't seen him in a while. Like I said until now, I have not really seen my sister due to my job and be decently far from where I used to live with my parents and my sister. And someone else says, 100% creepy. Also, she just had a massively traumatic event happen. He also told her to lie to you knowing that she just lost her parents. Highly manipulative and weird. He isn't a good guy. Not the asshole. And someone replies and says, also adding it's creepy AF that he asked her to keep it a secret. What the hell? He knew exactly what he was doing. Cole is not your friend, OP, and you really need to look at your circle and question those who are defending him. And someone else says, why would his family get involved? I always question the post that the OP's phone blowing up. I don't know anyone or have family members who would do something so ridiculous as blow up someone's phone, but obviously there are folks out there who have nothing better to do. And someone else says, not the asshole. Edit. To those who don't seem to get how creepy this is, let me break it down for you. This young woman just lost both of her parents in a traumatic accident and had her entire life upended by having to move in with her older sibling, which means she is not only traumatized, but extremely vulnerable. That's not even to mention that not only is the person she slept 9 years her senior, he is also a close and trusted family friend who is very close to her older sister, which puts him in a position of influence over her, a position which he used to get close to her and then slept with her, literally the day that she turned 18, which by the very definition of the word is manipulative. Was she legally an adult who was able to consensually choose to have intimacy with an older man? Yes. No one is questioning her right to choose. However, her being legally able to make that choice in no way changes the fact that he is a disgusting, manipulating predator who took advantage of his position of influence over a grieving teenager in order to manipulate her to have intimacy with him, literally the day she turned 18. That's not even to mention that he obviously knew what he was doing was creepy.
or they would never have asked the younger sister to lie and hide it from the OP. Is it technically legal? Yes. Is it incredibly predatory behavior and extremely creepy to sleep with someone 9 years your junior, literally on the day they turn 18? Also, definitively yes. If one of my friends had done this to my little sister, I would be absolutely furious, and they would immediately find themselves removed from my circle permanently. And then we get an update a few days later, and let's get into it. The update reads, "Hey Reddit, these past 4 days have been busy, but I'm back with an update. To start off with, I ended up talking to Lily about what happened that night, and she ended up revealing that shortly after I reintroduced Cole to her, he began texting her, saying he wanted to help her grieve. Lily had told Cole about her plan to go to that club, and by the time Cole had shown up, she was decently tipsy. Lily had woken up in Cole's bed the next morning, and after he had woken up too, he told my sister to lie about what happened by saying she was at a friend's house because I would consider it to be a betrayal of my trust if I knew they slept together. After further discussion, Lily and I decided that grief counseling was best for her. Lily said that she regretted for not getting it at the start because, to her, that's what started this. As for Cole's family and our friends, I decided to ask them what they were told by in 2 separate group chats. I was right that he didn't tell them what actually happened. Both his family were under the expression that Cole and Lily had told me already what happened at first and that I seemed okay with it. But when Lily wanted to talk further, I blew up on him out of the blue. I told them what actually happened, and while Cole's family seemed hesitant to believe me, they'd said that they would talk to Cole. As for our parents, they believed me, and while some apologized, some were saying that it shouldn't have been an issue in the first place because my sister was legal, so I had to drop those people. I have blocked Cole, and I haven't confronted him further, but I'm preparing myself for the worst when I do. Also, to clarify some things, I am a woman first of all, and second for all, I don't think Cole had ever romantically liked me the past 15 years of us being friends. There just hasn't been any signs of that, but then again, this proves that I don't know him as well as I thought, so I don't know. Thank you all for the advice, and I'll update you again if anything more comes out of this." And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to need you to clarify if that's you paraphrasing her saying she woke up in Cole's bed, or if that is exactly what she said. Because if those are her direct words, and this nearly 30-year-old man immediately jumps to 'don't tell your sister,' it makes me see red flags all over this. It sounds like he did take advantage of your sister, and that you might need to ask her a few more pressing questions about the specific events of that night to be sure. Hell, a talk with a preferably female officer might be helpful to clarify the lines that seem a little blurred here." And the OP responds and says, "I am not paraphrasing. What she initially told me when she came home after leaving Cole's apartment was that she stayed at one of her friend's place since it was so late in the night and she didn't want to wake me up." And another user says, "It's creepy that their relationship started with him consoling her regarding the grief. Still feels like she was taken advantage of, emotionally, not physically, although you have no context between tipsy and her waking up in the bed. Creepy." And then the OP comes back a few days later with another update, and let's get into it. The update reads, "I wanted to post an update a few days ago, but I felt emotionally and mentally exhausted. Per your guys' advice, I asked Lily if she actually remembered having intimacy with Cole, and she said that she remembered Cole buying her a drink. Then later on, Cole convinced Lily and her friend, who was tagging along with her, to let Lily go home with him. Lily remembers getting in the Uber and being inside of Cole's living room and bedroom, but not the intimacy itself. I mentioned that it's possible Cole drugged her with that drink, and if he did, then it's R word and Lily can press charges against him. Lily said if she did, she would want to press charges against Cole. We both got a bit emotional afterwards, and I apologized to Lily for not noticing that something was wrong when it first happened. As for Cole's parents, they threatened to cut him off financially if he didn't tell them the truth, and Cole admitted to what Lily said in the first post. Cole's parents apologized to me over the phone, and I told them what Lily said, and if he did drug her, then there's a possibility that we'd be pressing charges against Cole. They seemed to accept that and apologized one more time for harassing me before hanging up. Also, while clearing my phone of Cole-related things, pictures, videos, calendar dates, etc., I remembered a time when he was picking me up for a concert when we were 18 or 19. He looked at my outfit when I got into the car and mentioned how easy it would be for someone at the concert for them to rip it off and take advantage of me. I'll be honest, I was far more timid and more afraid of confrontation, so despite feeling weird about his comment, I brushed it off so we wouldn't fight over it. So there's one red flag I missed and regret not saying about it. Like I said in the last update, thank you all for your support and advice. I'll update you guys if anything major comes up. Edit. Oh, and I'm changing all of my passwords. Probably my apartment door lock too, that Cole has access to, just in case he tries anything. And now let's get into some of the top comments. One person says, Jesus Christ, saying the guy was a creep was such an understatement. He belongs in jail. And someone else says, ugh, I'm so sorry for you and your sister are having to deal with this on top of everything. I would maybe get some legal advice if you plan on moving forward with pressing charges. Also, get a R-word kit done, mainly to check for STIs, and it's most likely too late to get any DNA or other evidence, including evidence of being drugged. Depending on where you are located, I'm in the US, and from my experience, going straight to the police even a few days following the assault can lead to a never-ending he said, she said argument, and your sister will have to recant that night over and over and over again. That said, I strongly believe in justice, and it is very clear that your sister was taken advantage of. I would personally look into next steps for pressing charges. Again, I'm so sorry. And just know that people like Cole know what they're doing and how to hide their true selves from others. So none of this is your fault at all. I wish you and your sister nothing but the best. And this was the last post we had ever received from the OP. So I really wonder what ended up happening. Did the OP's ex-best friend, Cole, end up in jail or press a charge against him? Hopefully he ended up in jail. I mean, this guy is a complete creep, and who knows who else he's possibly taken advantage of, you know? I mean, if he took advantage of his best friend's little sister, he could have many more victims, which is so sad to think about. But hopefully the victims come to light and, you know, tell the police what he did, also press charges, and hopefully he goes to jail for a long time. And I hope that the OP and the OP's little sister are doing better now. Strangest thing that has happened in my life. Preface: this is not a creepypasta. This is not made up. I'm not trying to promote anything. I don't care about karma. I don't care about attention. Everything I'm about to write is 100% true. Last year, I went to Dubai with my girlfriend and my best friend. When you land, they give you a SIM card with a limited amount of mobile data. I didn't care about it, but my girlfriend took hers and so did my friend. They both put them in their phones and activated them. Even though we kept using our regular mobile data
until we got to our apartment. The first 3 days were completely normal. On the 4th day, we had our desert safari booked. The reservation was under my name, with my Romanian phone number and everything. The driver picked us up, took us into the desert, all that stuff. At one of the stops, there was a guy offering photos with a falcon. If you wanted one, you paid and he'd let you hold the bird for a picture. I politely said no. He kept insisting. Same answer. Later that night, while we were having dinner before heading back, after it had already gotten dark, the same guy came up to us again. This time, way more pushy, asking if we were really sure we didn't want a photo. Again, no thanks. We got back to the apartment, showered, went out for a walk, then came back. As crazy as this is going to sound, and again, I have absolutely no reason to make any of this up, I have nothing to gain from it, and the three of us are still confused about it to this day, but it was around 2 or 3 in the morning. We were literally watching an episode of Black Mirror when my girlfriend's phone started ringing. She answered it and put it on speaker. Nobody said anything. All we could hear was breathing, almost like a faint hissing sound. We said, "Hello?" Nothing. So we hung up. The call came to her Dubai number, the one from the SIM card she got at the airport. She had never used that number. She hadn't called anyone with it. Nobody had called her before, and she didn't even know what the number actually was. We decided to save the number and check the WhatsApp profile picture. And there is a profile picture they attached. I'm going to blur this guy's face because I don't know who this guy is, but it's a picture of, some guy. I did a reverse image search out of curiosity. It turned out to be the picture of the president of the UAE. Oh, well, then I'll unblur it. Obviously, it wasn't actually him. That's not the point. Here's the part that still creeps us out. Among the reverse image search results on Google and Yandex, there was an Instagram account that had posted that exact same picture. We opened the account and honestly, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. The last post on the account was from 3 years earlier. The profile picture was the same one as above, but the last post itself was a picture of the Falcon guy from the safari. I can say with 100% certainty that it was him. Same place we had visited, same clothes, same Falcon. We never got another call after that, and the rest of the trip was completely normal. Any thoughts? Any explanation? And now let's get into some of the top comments. One user says, maybe she'd dropped the package that the SIM came in. The phone number is often printed on it. And the OP says, no. This would have been plausible if the safari trip happened the first day, but it was on the 4th. We dressed casually. Totally different from the first that we landed, so no. Another person says, safari bookings, drivers, and camps share contact info aggressively for logistics, photo delivery, group chats, follow-ups, reviews, etc. Your reservation was under your name, but the driver picked you up. You were at the apartment. Passports get scanned for the SIM activation anyway. The ecosystem is leaky as hell. Many groups end up in vendor WhatsApps without realizing it. New tourist SIMs, the free/cheap DU, ones handed out on arrival, also hit spam lists or recycled contact lists extremely fast. It doesn't require hacking. It's just how the loose, commission-driven tourism machine operates. And the OP replies and says, I get what you say, very plausible, but we were staying in an Airbnb rented by someone private. No one at the accommodation asked for a passport/ID. Also, the safari trip was as well, without any passport/ID verification. The only thing where the sim could be associated with their passport was indeed at the airport, but still not enough for the story. I don't know. Another user says, that does sound weird, but to be fair, I wonder if that's not a very commonly used picture amongst people in the region. So that you got called by a random number that happened to use that profile picture? Because when I Googled reverse searched it, I also get many random websites such as Facebook, X, and Instagram pages. Maybe the specific Instagram showed up in your reverse search results because that guy was in your vicinity? I think we'd need someone from the UAE to clarify if it's common to use that image as a profile picture. It's still a weird coincidence. Either way. And someone else says, OP has been offered a number of plausible scenarios but seems determined to deny any of them. What answer do they want? Ghosts? Assassins? Ghost assassins? And someone else says, I think your Dubai number was leaked to the weirdo somewhere. And the OP replies and says, that's what I'm thinking, but how? Or just a pure coincidence? But I guess there is a bigger chance to win the lottery than this to happen. And another user says, it's simple. They were likely tracking your movements because your girlfriend is attractive and they knew her location constantly while in country and wanted to snoop on your browsing habits while in country. Why else would the Falcon guy show up randomly later and hassle you? He didn't expect her to be accompanied by others, and he's not accustomed to being told no, and only knows how to be aggressive to get his way. Still pissed and being denied, he did a creepy, heavy breathing phone call later in the middle of the night. It's definitely a good thing she was never out of your sight while you're visiting. People go missing all the time. Creepy indeed. Also, the whole Falcon photo thing was likely a ruse to get additional photos of each of you for a governmental database. People aren't always what they seem. Not wanting the sim and not wanting your photo taken? To them, it was fishy, and you're definitely a spy on a mission. And unfortunately, the OP has not updated us on what ended up happening or what the creepy phone call was or who the guy was or what happened, so I'm super sorry to leave you guys on a cliffhanger, but what do you guys think? I read every single comment, so comment down below what you guys think. Who do you think this guy is? Who made the phone call? How do they know where they are? And just what's the motive behind all of it? I'm interested to hear what you guys think. And all right, guys, that wraps up some insane true Reddit threads. I really appreciate you guys watching. And this video was dark, depressing, and insane. Please leave your comments down below on what you thought about today's video. I read every single comment, so please comment down below. I appreciate all of the feedback, support, criticism, whatever. I just like reading your guys' comments. And like I said, thank you guys so much for watching. From the bottom of my heart, it means the world, and make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel and follow my Instagram and follow me on Spotify. It really does help so much. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you will enjoy some other videos on the channel. So go check out some other videos on the channel. And yeah, I just want to say once again, thank you guys so much for watching. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.